Okay, good evening and welcome. This is the February 6th, 2023 meeting of the East Long Meadow School Committee. Call the meeting to order 6:02. This meeting is being both audio and videotaped this evening, and I would ask that folks please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we could do a roll call. Samantha, if you want to start us out, please.
Samantha Velasquez, Secretary.
Pamela Blair, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Ed Brown, Director of Curriculum.
Gordon Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
Gregory Thompson.
Antonella Rochelle.
Elizabeth Martin Boucher.
Amy Delenta.
Julia Boucher, Student Representative.
Sarah Trulio.
Okay, and Sarah joining us remotely this evening. We will go ahead with some minutes for approval, please.
I move to approve the January 23rd, 2023 regular session meeting minutes.
Motion made by Antonella,
Second.
second by Amy. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. That motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Many communications. Beth, would you like to start us out tonight?
Yeah, actually, I feel like I should have something, but I don't. Pretty weak.
Good enough. Amy,
Nothing tonight.
excellent. Julia,
Okay, so for the seniors, caps and gowns are being sold for $40.70. The orders are due by March 15th, and you can find the website in the weekly update that Mr. Page sent out. The sophomore class is holding a dine and night at Posto in Longmeadow on Tuesday, February 7th, and more info can also be found in the weekly update. Read Across America Day is on March 3rd, open to all juniors and seniors. There are permission slips in the library and are due Tuesday, February 28th. And many sports team had their senior night recently, including track, swim, basketball, hockey. And I know that track and swim have both qualified for Western Mass as well as states.
Nice.
excellent. Thank you so much.
I gotta-
Sarah, do you have anything this evening?
No, not tonight. Thanks, Greg.
Antonella?
Just the E-Leaf Gala is this Saturday night. So there's still tickets if anyone wants to still go. So that's it.
Excellent. Great. Okay. Moving on, we look for opportunity for visitors to speak with us tonight. Seeing none, we will continue to move forward. We have an update on the MSBA feasibility study and approval of the ELHS educational plan for submission, the preferred schematic report.
Okay. So in your packets, on the digital packet, you have the full educational plan, which was updated and revised since our submission to the MSBA in August. And the educational plan is actually just one part of a much larger file for the preferred schematic report. Want me to go through the update first and then come back to approving the plan?
Yep.
Okay. So the submission of the preferred schematic report. Basically what that does, if people remember, coming out of August and getting into September and October, as we were doing public forums, we had outlined as a school building committee really up to 7 options. And those 7 options became variations of, variations of what a new build might look like, variations of what an addition renovation might look like. And then one constant has always been, what does it look like if you just bring the building up to code? Off of that, as we progress through the fall, our public presentations and our survey, as well as our discussions as a school building committee, moved us really to focus in on the newer build options. And ultimately, the committee has now voted to move in the preferred schematic report to really focus the remainder of the next section of the feasibility study, which is schematic design, in looking at what is a new build that was originally called option 3C. And it's that option that I believe I showed a picture of the last update that sets the new building back further south on the campus and then allows for more green area up front. So we certainly can reconfigure the traffic pattern and parking, as well as on this side of the current building, over by the Norton Street neighborhood over here. You'd have reconfiguration of playing fields and then where our current athletic field is, that wouldn't be touched, but you would eventually have a reconfiguration of parking and how buses enter on sort of the corner over here of the existing building, as well as having tennis courts relocated closer to the athletic stadium, current athletic stadium, and basketball court. So that is, as of our meeting on Thursday, that's going to be the focus going forward. And all of the information that we generated in the report that went back in August now has become more specific around this option. And now we can go forward and actually start to get into some of the things such as, what does the outside of the building start to look like? What are the numbers off of just estimating off of just square footage? Can you start to estimate off in schematic design, off of materials and that type of thing? And then we get into the really challenging job of right now we're carrying all the amenities forward. So as you do that, obviously your costs are higher. With more public forums, we're going to eventually, hopefully start to look at what does the community want and where do we go as we go into schematic design and ultimately have to start to really get down to even more specifics as we look to get to the November vote in November 2023.
Just in terms of amenities, when you mentioned that,
Sure.
those are things that we may not keep in the final design, is what you were
Correct, sorry.
saying about that.
Yeah.
But because I went a different place when you first started, so I just want to clarify that. The second thing on the turf stadium,
Mhm.
we're still talking bathrooms and
Concession stand.
concession
Yep.
in the plan, just so you're aware of that.
Yep.
We're still talking the three departments in the plan, LCAT, IT, and central office is currently still in the plan.
Right.
And
Possibly has the opportunity to move to town hall should that space open up. So these are all things that will be in the discussion. No, good
right,
point.
but we'll have to decide on that sooner than later.
Right.
And then we also talked about photovoltaic. We actually put
Yes.
that into the solar panels on the roof. Which would be approximately 30% of the, so pretty substantial solar
Right,
field.
right.
But the way we're talking about heating it is a heat exchange system, so it won't be fossil fuels, it'd be all electric.
Right.
And so there's a bunch of units that go up on a roof and basically extract the heat from the outside air or extract the cool, depending on the time of year. So because of that, we've been told that we'll actually use more electricity than we do now in this building, which for a newer building, but we won't have any fossil fuels, so it'll be all electric. In doing so, the committee felt that there might be value in pursuing photovoltaic solar panel to offset some of the electrical use of the building, since we'll actually need more. So that was worth doing because MSBA requires that you plumb for it anyway.
Right.
In the building, and so we're looking at $2 to $3 million additional cost, but certainly there's a return on investment for that.
Seems like really strong, long, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's
The
just-
committee
right.
has done pretty, the committee, I think, has done, and Mr. Thompson actually pushed hard for it the other day in terms of the solar.
Well, it just seemed to make
Makes
sense,
a
because
lot
as
of
soon as we
sense.
found out we were gonna burn more electricity, then,
Right.
well, let's look at another option and,
Right.
and how we can start to,
They're actually solar as opposed to who knows where else they get their electricity from.
yeah.
Which is really my concern is I hate putting all of our eggs in one basket for one type of fueling of this entire building. So anything we can do to help it.
Yeah.
No.
Point.
And probably.
Next time we'll put together a joint presentation. The three of us.
No. Oh, yeah, you and and then we're gonna do a public,
You were in it.
a public forum soon.
Yes,
Correct.
so we have a school building committee meeting, as you know, on this Thursday. That building committee meeting agenda basically is to approve the minutes, which we need to do from the last meeting so that the submission can go in with approved minutes certified by the town clerk. And the next, I think, and only other agenda item is to discuss what the next public forum should look like and when should that be. So yes, that should be coming soon. I believe in March is what we're going to do.
Still discussion on the pool project too, even though it's a separate project, it hasn't been dropped off. I just wanted to
Right.
point out, it's separate vote, separate project, but we're still. And the architects will help us in terms of moving that forward too, so.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. And then the educational plan.
Okay, so the educational plan, as I said, is there's a digital copy in your packets online. There's only just the cover sheet in your paper packets. And basically, this has been revised where we've added to different sections. Predominantly where we added was around the areas where the large group instruction got mentioned. MSBA is really interested and had a lot of questions on how we would use large group instruction. We're certainly not the only project that has put a large group instruction classroom into its plans. However, you have to put into your educational plan how you might use that and how that becomes truly a collaborative space. And if they're feeling that the plans really lend themselves to that type of collaboration and true usage, then the grant will reimburse more of that space than it could currently. So we're hoping that those revisions will help us along those lines. Other areas where we added revision was just establishing some more detail around professional development, recent professional development, as well as some more detail around food services. Because one of the concerns or questions was that they didn't feel in our first plan, this is not MSBA, this was more the architects themselves, that we didn't go into enough detail indicating that this really is the sort of the flagship kitchen, if you will. And then from here, we serve at least 3 other schools. Birchland has its own kitchen, so certainly they help out as well. But that's why we have the food services van. That's why we do deliveries. And so this kitchen really needs to be more robust than just covering a high school itself.
That's one thing that I was thinking, and I know this is more a building committee thing, but I know that our shelter for the town right now is Birchland, but can I assume that this is going to be set up where it could take care of a similar situation? Right? That's a question we should ask next time we're
Yeah,
together.
because it's
Very good.
the generator is a good sized generator.
Yeah, I
which will
believe,
run the
yeah.
Portion of the building as
Yeah,
is intended.
so we want to
Birchland.
make sure that that,
Generator didn't run all that well this weekend at Birchland, so,
no,
yes, but yes, yeah.
I mean,
it's a great question.
I'll forget, and I just hit me like we should hopefully prepare it for that too, and
Absolutely, because this weekend was a great example.
Yeah.
You have plans in place and then you had to come up with contingency plans.
but even in terms of like the cooking and,
Right.
that sort of a.
Right. Yeah, Birchland actually, the experiences we've had with the shelter give us a great map going forward as to how the generator should be wired to handle certain things, such as we know that when we opened the shelter, we were housing up to, I think at the height of that week in the October storm, around 110 people. And we were feeding or running 3 meals a day and, feeding roughly 300 people, whatever can fit into Birchland's cafeteria. And not all of the kitchen was wired to the generator.
Mhm.
So that made for some adventurous times.
Yeah, so just moving, so that's a Thursday thing, but
That is a Thursday thing, but it's a good one. So really tonight with the educational plan, if we could get a vote, hopefully to approve, then this would become part of the submission of the entire preferred schematic report.
Okay, questions?
I know it was a lot of work for you guys. Ridiculous amount.
It was, there was more in August. It was just making sure at this point to make sure we were all coordinated on the same page. Because we had it as a shared document, so you had the architects offering some things. I offered some things, Ms. Brown offered some things, Mr. Page offered some things. And we all write a little bit differently. So then it was trying to make sure that we coordinate it, get it back into a style that makes sense and so forth. So that's what we did. Mr. Page loves meeting with me at length, so. Good 2-3 hour meeting. He loves it.
Okay, we would look for an approval of the educational plan. Please.
Okay, all right, I move to approve the ELHS educational plan for submission of the preferred schematic report as detailed.
Okay, motion made by Beth,
Second,
second by Antonella. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 I,
Those opposed, nay. That carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Architects and design team, thank you as well.
And that goes on 14th.
It was on the 14th, yes.
Okay, along the same lines, as many of you know, we have a new town director of municipal finance. Kimberly Collins. She actually came for a few minutes to our building committee meeting, so some of us got to meet her. And she has agreed to join the building committee. So has been tradition, this committee appoints to that committee. For a motion to do so, please.
Try it. I move to appoint Kimberly Collins, the new town director of municipal finance, to the ELHS building.
Okay, excellent. Motion made by Antonella. Second by Amy. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed, nay. That carries 5-0. Welcome aboard.
All right, I will let her know. She'll be very excited.
Yeah.
No work involved in that.
Okay, moving right along, we have an update on curriculum from Heather.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good to be here. It's been a while. I have some great things to share. Just a kind of a recap on the new curricular materials for this year. And just to back up, you know, we obviously got funding for this, but the other reason why it's been a big push from the Department of Ed is as we learn more about how kids learn, it's really important for our curriculum to reflect that so that we're not asking teachers to teach in a way that's not aligned with the curriculum. So this year was the first year for K-5 rolling out Wit and Wisdom and Foundations. And Foundations, if you might remember, is kind of the explicit instruction in phonics and phonemic awareness that really allows kids to learn how to decode. And then the Wit and Wisdom is more for the language comprehension piece. So all that rich content, knowledge, vocabulary that they need to be able to understand what they read. And then Haggerty is a phonemic awareness program that Meadowbrook had been using for the most part, and this was just the official rollout year. Illustrative math 2 years ago, a good chunk of folks piloted it. This year, those folks, a lot of those folks continued, and then we brought on 5th grade math. And then next year will be the full implementation of illustrative math. And that's a little bit less of a shift. And I'll talk about this in a minute because so much of what we've been doing with our math coaches has really shifted how we teach math. So these curricular materials really match that, which is nice. It was the first year for 6 to 8 to have illustrative math. 9th through 10th decided to go with Reveal. And they just had a PD that I'll talk about. Our PD, actually, we got a lot of great feedback, including at the high school. 6 to 8, the Open Sci Ed is a open source science curriculum that's recommended by DESE. And what we got was a 3-year implementation grant to purchase really robust professional development for them, for all their science teachers at Birchland, and all the materials. So they've been rolling out different units, and this was the first year that they've done all of the units that they have, 6 through 8. The high school history department went through curriculum renewal, and they're using the same curricular material company as our 6 through 8. So that's nice for the kids to all have what's called Teachers Curriculum Institute. It's History Alive, Geography Live, things like that. And then they're also supplementing with the Brown University's Choices curriculum. And then 6 through 12 and connection with the shifts in how they're asking us to teach world languages. Under direction of Jen Faulkner, who's the department head there, really got the ball rolling, got everybody trained at the Massachusetts Foreign Language Association's Proficiency Academy, and then helped us get this curriculum, which is completely aligned with that kind of teaching. So it's a lot going on, but the good news is things are really going well. Like I said, there's really great positive feedback on our curricular-based professional development, which I'll share in a minute. And one of the things that just keeps, what we have to keep doing is messaging the why about these new materials. Because obviously the high quality instructional materials are crucial for all kids to have equitable access. We know what kids are receiving. We know it's rigorous. We know that it's systematic, and we know it's culturally responsive. We went through a whole process last year to choose these, and that these skills build upon themselves every year. So whatever they're learning in 2nd grade, they use for when they're in 5th grade. But change is hard. It's difficult. Although the curriculum committee was made up of teachers and administrators, we shared detailed agendas and, our notes for every meeting. We encouraged the teachers to share their thoughts with their committee representative throughout the whole process. There's still some teachers who feel like they didn't have a voice in the process, which is unfortunate. I'm hoping our implementation committee will have more representation from all schools. The other piece is sometimes folks have a different philosophical approach to things than the curricular materials are. And that's unfortunately, like we keep saying, as we know better, we do better, right? So how we were teaching is not bad or wrong. It's just that we know that kids actually need different things for their reading instruction. So that's been a hard shift too, when you have to make that philosophical jump. And a lot of teachers are feeling like it's overwhelming because it is a whole new way of teaching literacy, and it takes a lot of planning. And we've been putting some ports in for that, which I'll share about. But the good news is all the hard work that they're doing will be the planning for the rest of every year after this. So it's not like they have to go through this hard process every year. It's a heavy lift the first year. The way Wit and Wisdom lays it out is that the first year is learning, and then knowing, and then owning it, right? So it's a process. And so we're trying to use the common planning time in as effectively as we can, supporting the common planning time facilitators and making that time useful. But again, it's a lot of change. The other thing that you might hear is that it's more rigorous. And that's because a lot of the studies have shown that when we don't take on high quality instructional materials, we're often teaching lower than we realize. But the reality is that, some of our kids are not necessarily decoding at the level of the literature that they need to read for Wit and Wisdom. And the whole country's kind of gone with this model of guided reading groups where kids read at their level. But the issue is even though they can decode those books and sometimes predict what's happening in the books, it's a whole other story. They're not necessarily getting the language, that rich language that I was talking about before, like their peers. So what we've done is we've purchased Learning Ally, which is online books that all kids can access. And we've always used Google Read and Write. So these are ways for kids, in addition to Read Alouds, where even if I'm not able to actually decode the piece in front of me, I'm able to listen to it. And that's really what we're working on with Wit and Wisdom anyway, is that language comprehension. So long story short, it's hard. We have lots of systems in place. People are making progress. And the great news is that our last professional development was overwhelmingly positive. Just so you know, before I go into that, we do have ongoing professional development. So all the core teachers K-3 and the reading interventionist K-5 meet with a foundations coach 6 times in a year. So they've met 3 times this year and will meet 3 more times. All the K-5 core teachers and administrators met with a wit and wisdom coach who came to every common planning time and helped teachers kind of look at a different way of planning so it's not so overwhelming. We got great feedback from that. And then the leadership team will have completed 5 instructional rounds with the Center for Leadership and Educational Equity, which has been very powerful work where we're just learning about fine tuning our observation and giving feedback, but also just reflecting on our own leadership and learning and growing with each other. So that's very promising. But we did have, and this is just the schedule for the PD. As you can see, a lot of it was curriculum based, but there was a lot of choice this time. So I think that's also why people are happy. Like I said, a lot of people are already familiar with illustrative math. So people who hadn't ever taken the first illustrative math PD, it's their launch. It was highly recommended that they did that. And then for people who wanted to expand their knowledge of illustrative math, we had other PD with them around UDL and just making sure that our math classrooms are places where all kids can access the curriculum and learn. We also had wit and wisdom professional development where people continued. It was a working session where they worked with the coach and continued to plan. And then we had very professional development for counselors and music teachers and the world language teachers. And so overall, it was, like I said, I'll show you the charts in a minute, that they really did give us great feedback. And the one thing that I realized as people kind of say, next year is going to be even more overwhelming because we've got wit and wisdom and then we're taking on illustrative math. But when you look at the number of folks who took up the launch, it was about 14 classroom teachers. So it's not that illustrative math is not going to be new for all of our teachers. And for some teachers, there won't be anything new next year. It's just going to be continuing. So these are the charts.
Wait, I have a question about.
Yeah.
The CD.
Yeah.
So the teachers, they don't, because some of these say no need to sign up. So they chose which ones they could go to.
So the sign up was really more for me for 2 things, to make sure that I had enough spaces. And it's very quick for me through Teach Point to give them their PDPs. If they didn't sign up, I took their attendance sheets and went ahead and gave them their PDPs. So the ones where they didn't sign up were ones where I knew I didn't have to worry about capacity.
If they didn't sign up though, were they in a different PD? Like what else were they doing that day?
So
They had to be at.
it had to be someplace.
If
Okay.
Yeah.
they didn't have to sign up ahead of time for the ones that were signing up online.
Yeah.
Because that way, the ones that were where they were mandated to sign up online, when that capacity closed, it was no longer open to anybody. The ones where they would go to, say, the cafeteria where we could seat as many people as we need to, we would take attendance there.
The high school in Birchland were very building based, so it's kind of like you're there or you don't come that day. It's the elementary that was kind of all over the place and it was harder for me to keep track.
So the secondary, they kind of did their own PD unless a teacher wanted to go to one of.
So, right, so the counselors chose to go to the counseling, the high school math teachers had a PD around their new curriculum. The world language teachers had a PD around their old curriculum, but the other folks worked on UDL in their own subject area. And so they were creating a product for Mr. Page to look at, which really just showed their curriculum mapping and then how they're incorporating UDL through voice and choice, amongst other things. And then very similarly at Birchland Park, they had one workshop was on, and he rotated through these on kind of accessing informational texts for basically everybody but math teachers, because the math teachers were illustrative math, because everybody accesses text in their classes, even in math, but they had math PD. Or they were looking at, he's been kind of going through universal design for learning as removing barriers. So this workshop was around removing barriers for kids who have experienced trauma, and how they can access, how we as teachers can support them and help them access the learning in the classroom. So I didn't make them sign up for that because they didn't really have a choice. Those were the workshops they were going to.
Okay.
And just this is the feedback, just this purple one, strongly disagree, not that people don't strongly disagree, but just a caveat, that person also said how wonderful the PD was and how she's excited to implement illustrative math next year. So I was thinking maybe she typed some strongly disagree by mistake. But as you can see, it's overwhelmingly, positive. So the majority of people are thinking they're going to use the information they learned from the PD in their classroom. And in fact, I was walking around today and saw someone implementing something from the PD right in their class, which is awesome. The satisfaction was pretty high, and that's it for the feedback.
And these are from all the teachers in the whole district?
Who filled out the form?
Okay.
So not everybody did. Yeah.
How many teachers are there?
How many
What's that?
teachers are there?
Yeah.
200.
No, 240.
Yeah.
Yeah. 200.
Yeah.
Like, how do they not fill out the form?
Well, quite frankly, I really did target this at the elementary teachers. So
Okay.
I didn't ask the high school and the middle school because it is building based. And that's really because the lift for elementary schools is so much, and even on me, quite frankly, it's all I can really handle right now is
Well,
focusing on the elementary.
A lot of the PD that you had offered was for the elementary.
Yeah,
schools.
right.
So I guess that makes sense. But I would be curious to see about the secondary as well.
It's just, I know you put a lot of effort into it, creating the day and the information, and it would be nice if they
Gave you feedback.
gave you feedback.
Yeah.
Yes, well,
Not that it's not a reflection.
We are
I'm
getting,
happy about the feedback.
Okay.
It's great when people like the PD, because if you don't like the PD, often it's because you don't feel like it's applicable to you. And obviously, whether or not people are feeling strongly, for the new curricular materials or having problems with it, from the feedback we got, majority of people still found the professional development helpful for what they've been tasked to do.
Good.
So. And this last slide is just that we continue to focus on MTSS at the schools at this district level. And it's really about how all of these things come together: curriculum, instruction, and assessment, making sure that we're looking at things globally to make sure things that there aren't barriers to kids accessing the curriculum, but also making sure we have safety nets for kids so that we are supporting them academically or socially emotionally. So that's kind of another ongoing PD where we use the panorama dashboard with the leadership team to help them with their own teams at their schools. That's that. So are there other questions?
I have one other question. Hi,
Yes.
Heather. Just continuing to think about how our administrators are gaining support around this as well. It was great to hear that you saw evidence of strategies from professional development in classrooms today, that you were able to observe that, but how are we supporting elementary principals, especially given the volume of options that they had, to be able to make the same noticings that you were able to make today?
Yes, because they're tasked with both learning the curriculum and observing, right? So our PD with CLE is really is more general. But the principals, they go to a foundations PD online. They've now had 2 or 3 where I attend as well, directly for foundations for principals. They've also all gone to Lead Wit and Wisdom, and they've also gone to Observing in a Problem-Based classroom for illustrative math. But again, the go to the PD does not necessarily translate into I know everything. So what we're doing is in between the instructional rounds that we're doing with CLE, I'm walking around and Gordon's walking around with principals so that we can continue to have those conversations and kind of hone in, what does it look like when these curricular materials are used in the classroom, and what's the feedback that's really going to help teachers continue to grow.
Terrific, thank you.
Okay,
Right.
any questions? Excellent, Heather. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I just have to.
Heather.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move forward with a 2023 second quarter financial report.
Yeah, so I'm glad I was able to make the time because I thought this was very important for everybody to see where we're at. So in your packet is a spreadsheet that's designed as a financial update for the FY 23 school budget as of the second quarter, December 31st, 2022. This also includes your grants and revolving accounts as well. If you would go to page 5, and I so apologize, that's where the spreadsheet is, that my numbers didn't come out on the bottom of the page there, but that's where I usually always go right to. At the top section here are your salary accounts, and as you make your way down, as I always tell you, at the beginning of the year, most of your salary lines are encumbered. There are some that are not encumbered, such as you'll see athletics with a balance there, some of the medical staff that's not encumbered. Let's see, as we work our way down, the only line item here that I'm just really honing in on and looking at is your teachers, which is 3/4 of the way down in that top section, which has a large balance right now, $496,000. I started to analyze that a little bit, and it seems to me, and I will continue to look at that there is a leave of absence, there's a resignation where then we had lower salary staff comes in. That starts to add up. And then if I have any vacancies, it only takes 5 or 6 staff out of the 250 that we just talked about. So although that number looks large, I'd like everyone to remember, if you go over to the left, teachers, Unit A staff is $20 million out of our $33 million budget. So that's not so much there, but I will continue to watch that for you. The other area is your substitutes. I see 269,000 out of the 360,000 that was budgeted. And I believe this has to do with your ESSER funding, which we've been very grateful to get, which we put permanent building subs on. We have, most of the schools have, I think it's 3 at each school, and it has been life-changing for them. I'm sure Miss Lodi, who's here, can attest to that fact. It's just been very, very helpful to have some consistent bodies in there that you're not scrambling last minute. So therefore, because that funding has been under the ESSER grant, I'm seeing funds remaining here. I will probably, as time goes on, suggest that we then move those expenditures to the operating budget so we can free up ESSER funding to go into next year. Those are the only things I wanted to bring to your attention on the salary side. Anyone have any questions on any of the salary items?
Actually, I do. With the substitutes, they're not considered full-time because they're.
The permanent building subs are, yes, they work every day at a little higher rate. I believe it's 110 per day. That's correct.
I'm happy you're doing it. I was just curious. Okay.
It has been very, very successful, as I said, and we are getting great feedback, and they certainly would like to see that continue into the future. So
Principals would love to see that continue.
Okay, good.
yes, please, Renee says.
The challenge there is that at least we've been able to fill those slots. Even though we continue to advertise for daily on-call subs, we're not seeing the same number of applicants if we're seeing applicants at all. I was just talking to Dr. Allen this afternoon regarding substitutes, and his routine has been, if he puts a posting up for on-call substitutes, he then generally will do a Zoom interview first, and then off the Zoom interview, invite ones that seem to be more of a match to an in-person interview. what he's finding is that half to 3/4 of the applicants don't even show up for the Zoom interview. So it's been really a struggle, as I'm sure Mrs. Lodi can also attest to, getting the daily on-call folks.
So each school has 3 right now. Or
Not all of them.
Not all.
Not all of them.
Filled. All
Right.
three.
The positions exist.
They're-
Each school has a
They have the
that
option.
building, so
And we're trying to keep at least 1 or all 3.
for next year.
That's something we're gonna actually go through as we go through the level services budget.
Because as Pam said, we pay for them through ESSER now.
Right.
So obviously that's gonna dry
That
up
money's-
at some point, and
Right.
that's 15 potential employees. The substitute fund is $360,000. Which usually we use more of if we didn't have the
Um,
subs, than the
we-
90. I know.
Yes, that is correct.
Oh,
We could
then,
put-
yeah, we would use more of it
Yes.
now.
So even if we're
absolutely,
halfway through the year and it's 180, we're only using half of the 360. So potentially part of that, we could
Fund for permanent.
transfer from one line item to the other.
Yes,
yeah. Correct.
On an ongoing budgetary
Right.
basis.
I have to say too, for consistency for the kids, they're much more, obviously they have relationships with the kids, but they're much more aware and understand the curriculum. Some of them actually came to our PD day.
oh, that's.
Yeah.
Um, and through our Clever system, I can set them up so that they can access the curriculum. It's not like someone just coming in and going, I can't get to this.
No, I definitely see the benefits in it, especially for the kids,
Right.
seeing someone that they know and have a relationship with every day, instead of having someone new come in every day. And they know the building, they know the
Yeah.
people, so it's.
I know, I
Makes sense.
think one of the other school systems had it, and I thought it was such a great idea. Remember, we had the discussion, let's try it. They're not doing it anymore, and it's like, it's just, I hear wonderful things about it from us, so I'm happy we're doing it. I really
Well,
am.
they're FTEs, that's why they're not doing it.
Well, I
And so if you
know,
roll into your operating budget,
it's gonna be tough, I know.
which is why we may not 15.
Even if
Anything,
you had anything,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
but we'll talk about that more.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
we will.
So we're all set on the salary side? Okay. We'll move down to the bottom section of the spreadsheet, and these are your expense line items. And in all honesty, the only line that I'm honing in on is that contracted services. It looks like it's a large balance there, 272,000. But if you go over to the left where you see the budget there, that, you know, we've got just about $3 million there. So that's a significant amount. There's many things, you know, incorporated into contract services, transportation, legal fees, therapeutic contract services, which has been a hot ticket item this year for many obvious reasons, just dealing with the pandemic, not being able to get and keep paraprofessionals and having to go into contracted services for some help in that area. So right now, I'm seeing a good balance there, but I will say that on the special ed line items, within this area, the contracted services, the special ed line items were over budget. So I had to use some circuit breaker funding to help offset that. So obviously, as the year goes on, if contracted services overall has funds remaining, we can then do journal entries to move things again back from circuit breaker to the operational budget. But it's too early for those decisions to be made. I'm just throwing it out there so you just know kind of what I'm thinking. The rest of your line items there are all on target to where, you know, they should be. The educational supplies, obviously, those are your principals for the supplies they buy for the schools. And that's an ongoing thing throughout the year. So, and I'd like to remind you that this was as of December 31st. So another month has gone by since then. But so as a reminder, the bottom of the page there, your total budget, 33,319,015. We have expended 12,496,116. We have encumbered 18,617,362, leaving a remaining total balance as of December 31st, 2,205,540. Any other questions before we go over to the grants and revolving?
Pam, on the paraprofessional line.
Yep.
Item, those are positions not filled, right? The available balance.
Yeah, so up at the paraprofessionals, I didn't hone in too much on that. Out of the $1.9 million for paraprofessionals, there's only 83,000 remaining there. It has been, and again, Ms. Lodi will attest to this fact, a constant challenge. We get a para they're here, they resign. We get a para, it was not all the positions, but many, it's been very, very challenging this year. I mean, it's been challenging through the whole pandemic, but I think even more so this year. I think I was watching the news this morning and they were saying that for every one person, there's like, I don't know, like 7 jobs to one person. It's kind of crazy, this day and age right now. But, so anyways, the 83,000, I mean, that equates to maybe 3 or 4 paras, you know what I mean? That's that constant turnover. And then if I have somebody who is at a higher hourly rate and then they leave and then I get somebody in at a lower. So it's all those little changes that add up. But again, this helps the budget in the end of the fiscal year and we'll see, where all these balances remain.
We've probably been running 4 to 5 paras short.
Yep.
For the entire year. May not always be the same position, but unfortunately, we have not ever hit our full number of budgeted paraprofessional positions this year, which then in turn has caused contracted services to go up even further than we expected. And certainly our service providers, obviously are dealing with inflationary times as well. So we already knew we were going to be paying more and now we're paying even a little bit more. I actually have an example of so you know what that looks like for at least one provider and all the providers are pretty similar. Anyway, we'll talk later.
Okay.
Sorry.
No worries. So we'll go to the next page then, and that's your grants and your revolving. At the top of the spreadsheet is your grants. We have the federal grants first that I always list off. And the large one, of course, is the ESSER 3 grant. We have managed that very, very well. The ESSER 1, 2, and 3. We're very, very grateful to have had these funds. The pandemic has just caused more challenges, I think, than any of us could have ever really, thought was going to happen, especially with our youngest students, which Ms. Lodi will talk about in a bit. So right now we have 1.9 million still remaining out of the 2.2 million there.
And out of that, there's things that we've talked about using it for. As we go through the budget process, can we hone in on those things, put them down on paper and discuss a little bit, just so we are all
Aware of what the
Yeah.
plan is.
good amount of money and
Yep.
Right.
it's a unique grant, federal grant that's going to be gone, but
That is,
as we keep going.
Sure.
it makes.
No, we can
perfect
certainly
sense.
bring that in the next meeting.
Okay.
As budget development obviously is going to continue to be a topic that's on agendas. So the next one, we can break it down even further, where and how we're dealing with level services versus managing ESSER.
Yep.
And so that will give you a good idea of
Okay.
what's on what.
Yep.
Yes, we will do that. Thank you. So as you make your way down, these are just our annual grants that we always, get, the Title I, the Title IIA, Title IV, Special Ed, IDEA, all of those I anticipate will be expended by year end, except for the ESSER 3 grant. Then you move down and you see your state grants. We had the Foundation Reserve grant, which I'm just going to remind you, we had additional funding come in, and that was due to our additional enrollment last year that came in after the budget process. So the state recognized what was happening to districts out there. And so we were given $139,073, and we have been using that towards some paras that were hired due to the needs of the enrollment. So that's been wonderful to have in addition to the ESSER. And I do anticipate that will be expended by year end.
And we would only get that.
It was a one-time thing. I do not anticipate that again.
So how do we address?
It's
in
gonna have to be
enrollment?
part of the plan between ESSER and operating budget on how do we balance that? Because the needs are different and we do have to talk about that.
Right.
And I don't want to take Ms. Lodi's thunder, but she's got, she deals with it every day and can talk about the needs of those, the preschoolers, the little tykes who, yeah. Okay, then we have the DPH grant. Kelly LeBombard oversees that grant. She'll have that expended by year end. I work with her on that. We have the METCO grant. That too will be expended. The teacher diversification grant, that's still a question mark. Well,
Move that back.
oh yeah, that grant will go away. We were not able to expend it the way it was intended. So we only had received like 770 of it because they give you 10% of a grant up front, and then once you use it, then you start drawing it down. So I'm in the process right now of that. It hasn't happened yet, but that will happen. Then you have your private grants. Those are two just carried over, the 1-8 Foundation Open SciEd grant and the Project Lead the Way Sustainability, and those funds are being expended as we speak. Yes, I send my little gentle reminder. Are there any questions on the grants at all?
Are we, yeah, actually, are we still following through the Project Lead the Way in the schools? It's just gonna keep going, even though it's entrenched now and it's moving.
At Maple Shade and the high school.
Great, thank you.
Okay, on the bottom there are your revolving accounts. As I always remind you, these accounts roll over from one year to the next. So I listed there the carry forward balance, just like I did on the first quarter. And then I show you the receipts in each of the line items, your expended, and then the current balance. As you make your way down, you see the athletic, 18,000, athletic stadium rental, 10,000. School rental and miscellaneous accounts is 163,000 there. Remember, those are many accounts behind the scenes, and each school has the rental account. And just as a reminder, the committee had voted at the last meeting, I believe, to use some of those funds for a roof project.
Yeah.
Yep.
The birth
So-
rental. Yep.
Yep. The student mobile technology insurance, we talked about that. There is a current balance of 60,155. I have been asked to talk with Mr. Quimby and perhaps have him come in and we'll do a presentation to make sure. I know there was some concern. No one wants to be overcharged for anything. And so this was a pilot program, which is very, very successful, but we do want to make sure that it's still where it should be. So I'll talk with Ryan on that and figure out in the next month or two to, give a presentation of some sort. The staff, mobile technology repairs, that's right where it should be. They give us that check, I believe it's 3,500, and that covers any of the Unit A members. The school gift accounts, again, that's 54,000, but that's across the entire district. Tuition revolving account. So this is, you're going to see that there's been revenue of 73,000 to date. I believe that the projection last year was maybe about 160 or 70. Some of what changes a little bit because some of the little tykes that start in at a preschool where they might be a peer role model student then end up becoming an IEP student. So the revenue stream stops. Not that we did this all for revenue, but we wanted to help offset the expense so we could make this happen. So I'm anticipating maybe a total of about 150,000 there. We do have a pre-K teacher there and a paraprofessional that's being funded by the tuition revolving, and that will be one of the components that we talk about and we bring forward on what will go on there for next year to help sustain this program, if that all makes sense.
Are you suggesting more might go on there?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
But the
No.
carry
No.
forward, the carry forward is
Pre-K
less.
tuition?
Well,
Okay,
The carry forward is less than last year, right?
Correct.
That was 150.
Yeah.
It's 215 last year. So we actually spent more this year than last.
I'm trying to think, Greg, on the
Because our
details.
carry forward, so
I thought I have one teacher and one paraprofessional
now we
you
do,
do right now.
right?
now.
But to put more on it,
We're not putting more on.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry if I
No, we had talked about,
said we were,
when we get into sort of how we're at the 3-7 level services, we had initially said, okay, well, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do this to get it off of ESSER.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden, level services was, and this kind of
jumping.
a preliminary view of our presentation. Level services was going much higher than we had hoped. And so we kept a certain amount back on ESSER, and I believe all we're going to carry forward is what we traditionally have, is just one preschool teacher and one paraprofessional. So we'll have to figure out the other piece of that development next year. Because we
Just
do,
how many are we gonna hold on ESSER for that?
we'll get to that. when we-
Yeah.
The next line is your circuit breaker, which is special education reimbursement. That's the 4 times the per pupil foundation allowance, about a $47,000 amount, and it's those expenses above that dollar threshold that then can be applied towards circuit breaker reimbursement at hopefully a 75% reimbursement. So that is estimated to come in this year at 1.2 million. Just reminding you that we are able to roll over an entire year's circuit breaker, which is to our benefit to try to roll over as much as we can of that current year's revenue for those unforeseen items that can happen with special education that we've seen before. And I'm sure we'll see again, students moving in, the programs are changing constantly. So we need to have a little bit there to be able to handle that.
And why only the 310 on the receipt?
Only the first quarter came in. It comes in quarterly, but if I did this December 31st, it wasn't in. It probably came in January 4th on my birthday. Probably came in. So
Yeah.
it's 310 with that. That was just first quarter. Okay. The transportation revolving account. So that carryover of 88,901, most of that was probably revenue for this year that was collected before the year switched. So again, that's about the 150,000 there that we collect, which is right where I figured we would be. So this helps to offset transportation expenses. The school lunch account. And again, I'm just going to say, kudos to Lori Paul. She runs a great program. She's got a great staff, very dedicated. They kept everything going through that pandemic, and it's finally a very healthy account again. There is 487,000 in there at my account. The last time I did this, Lori has items, which she gave me a detail because I did talk to her about that balance. She has a walk-in refrigerator at Birchland and Meadowbrook that she is anticipating she's going to need. That's about $50,000 there. She needs a dishwasher at Meadowbrook, $45,000. And then there's many other smaller items. And on top of then that she really needs to maintain a good 260,000 in there because that's what the requirements are to keep that healthy, that account. So does that
Anticipate those expenditures? Yeah.
She does. And again, if you wanted additional information, I could get that from her and she'd be more than happy to come in. You just let me know.
Yeah.
Which
well,
schools were the fridges in?
Birchland and Meadowbrook. And the dishwasher at Meadowbrook.
You think Birchland would be done yet, but it's already 20 years old.
20, yeah,
No,
right?
23
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
This summer.
And the last line item there is your school choice account, which had a rollover balance of 209,000. 74,000 has come in, and right now we have 284,147 remaining in there.
More will come in though.
Yes.
We know the year
And
total for
Is
this.
that coming quarterly as well?
it comes in actually monthly with the chapter 70 revenue.
What do we use those funds for?
Right now, we're not using them.
Okay.
Hopefully going to build it to a point where it can be a resource similar to circuit breaker, where if you're hit with a significant expense that's unexpected, you have somewhere to go other than going back to the town.
What about the fact that it's a continuing source of revenue more so than anything else? So if you're gonna add,
So as you come off,
FTEs,
right, if
yeah.
you come off ESSER, you
That's
could,
what I was thinking.
if you can manage it,
Those
you know,
subs.
once you get it to a level where we know that we're going to have X amount. Similarly to the tuition account, but the tuition, as you know, as we are going to propose that we're going to go to more half-day sections. That would be easier to manage because you know how many students you have in the district, and certainly with special education students, you're going to get. Once you go through the circuit breaker process, you're going to get more money for those students.
I just want you guys to be careful moving forward with how you use that school choice. You do not want to become dependent on it for any program.
Well, we're gonna.
It's one thing if you want to use it maybe to fund special education or something that's unexpected, like Pam was saying, but I would
What's
just.
different than ESSER, it's a constant source, a revenue source, right? We can count.
As long as you stay in the program, yeah.
But you don't.
Don't add new students, then once students
Graduate out,
Yeah.
yeah, we'd have to certainly.
And then once you go toward, when you go to the town for money, they're gonna be like. Yeah.
Right, but I think we're getting to that.
Must. I'm just being cautious. I'm like,
Well, I think we're already at that point, Beth. I think that's that's gonna happen regardless. I'm with you. I take your, I got your point. I do.
I think it would be helpful if we keep talking about this ESSER funding, which has been great, but it is going to stop, and it's going to stop on September 2024. So we have this for the whole next fiscal year, which is going to be very helpful to us. But how do we strategize to use it to the best of its capability? And then how does the district continue to grow? Because we have to grow. We've had those conversations. We're in the people business. I feel like we're going to need some additional FTEs. I want to be very careful about how we do it, but I do feel like there's some things we need. And again, Ms. Lodi will allude to more of that the needs that are especially at the younger age. But I'd like to see this roll over so that when that ESSER does go away, that we have a plan to continue to, these paraprofessionals, they're really needed. And anyways.
Yeah, but we can't even find the.
True, but that's right now. It's always like this.
I know.
You can't find the people.
That's,
Yeah, I find it fascinating that the building subs are probably getting paid approximately the same
Yes,
as a new para, yet they'll sign up to be a sub, but not a para.
Right.
Which I find if it's the variety they like, or, it's kind of interesting to figure out what is that, you just hire more building.
different duties,
Hire all the building subs you do.
Well, I know that, but I mean, at least they're
different duties, I would
Yeah,
think. And
I think it depends on the specific assignment.
yeah.
That can be challenging, and I'm sure that tomorrow, as we open our negotiations with paraprofessionals, we're gonna learn more about that.
Oh, yeah, you are.
that is true. So, it's imperative to remember that the balances provided are a snapshot in time and are changing constantly.
Mhm.
So I don't know if anyone has any other questions. You're welcome. Thank you.
Wow.
Okay, with that, if there are no further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the second quarter financial report.
I move to accept the second quarter financial report as presented.
Motion made by Beth,
Second.
second by Antonella. Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you all. Thank you, Pam.
You're welcome.
Roll right into budget development.
Okay, so you have a document in front of you. Just continued on from the last meeting. And of course, Gordon and I are going to do this together here. I'll just start off, and we usually then kind of,
Want to walk us through chapter 70 and
yeah, so.
come up with the estimate?
Yeah, so I think I had alluded to the fact that I was working with Desi. They reached out to businesses knowing that we're in a really difficult place, and the towns as well, not knowing what is your chapter 70. Usually we know in the third week of January, and it helps because you need to know how much funding you're getting from the state. And because of the new administration, that is not going to happen until probably in early March. So Desi worked with business managers, and I just want to be very, very clear. They asked everyone this is an estimate developed with Desi. Many assumptions are put into place here. Like I'm using some of the same exact from the prior year so that we just bring things forward. So that's just an estimation, but according to their formula, and I feel comfortable to say that I believe that it will be around $670,000 estimated increase in the chapter 70 next year. So what does that mean? Last year was 13,030,624, which was an increase of 854,666 from the prior year. So we are probably going to be down a little bit from the prior year, but I'm really hopeful that will come in.
Not down a total number.
No, not in total number, the 854. Correct. Yes. Thank you.
670 above.
Above the
Yeah.
13,030,000.
I see. Okay.
So it would be 13,700,624. I believe is the number. Question mark. Again, this is just a projection with a lot of assumptions in place to just try to help us kind of figure out what then happens, what happens next from there.
If you look at the fiscal year history of chapter 70, 670,000 is along the lines of a year where it's a pretty large increase compared to some of the other years. Say, if you look back at FY 14, 15, or 16, And then certainly as you look at FY 21 or 22. So we're cautiously optimistic.
optimistic.
670,000 in addition to the chapter 78 that we've gotten this year, going up 670,000. One thing I will add, the superintendents on Friday had a presentation done by the Mass Taxpayers Association, and their president, Doug Howgate, delivered a presentation that was really positive, which over the years when we've had that presentation has not been always the case. But it's incredibly positive, as you know, because they've broken records in terms of the tax revenue they've brought in over the last 2 years. So much so that it invoked the law that then gave everybody a tax rebate this year. Even though they're not on that pace again, they're above expectation in what they're collecting this year. So it's an interesting look at the graph because you're lower than what you were bringing in last year, but you're still above what your expectation would be from an average standpoint across the years. So basically, the Commonwealth is incredibly fiscally strong and healthy. And some of the things that Mr. Howgate presented is that they've actually started trust funds to put together support down the road should they need it for things, like special education or for higher education. And so they're really looking to be very strategic in terms of how they think for the future. I think Ms. Valente, you were talking about strategic thinking in terms of the school building committee. So the state seems to be thinking along those same lines. How do we make sure that we don't get into a situation where down the road, should we come on hard or challenging fiscal times, we're not completely without hope or resources. And so that was interesting to hear. Anyway, the point that I was taking from that is I'm even more optimistic that our new governor's budget, will continue to support our chapter 70 at the level that we've seen the last 2 years, and will continue to support the Student Opportunity Act and circuit breaker at 75%. So those are things that we certainly count on as we look at the budget.
So I've been working on your budget, as I've been saying for weeks now, and I'm at a much more comfortable place to tell you that, the projected level services budget, which brings all staffing and effective programs back for the 2024 school year, currently estimated to be a 3.7% increase. I have to say, I'm very pleased with this, as many districts are seeing a much higher increase. On the listserv I'm on with other business managers, I'm hearing people say, like, I wish I was at 3 or 4. They're higher. So again, it goes back to talked about the funding, all that grant funding and how people used it. And there's a lot of components, and I think the challenges that all districts are facing right now. So that amount is a 1.215309 increase. I'll let you know, I should have written that amount there, so I do apologize. The level services budget is developed with the special education out-of-district tuition line item increased by $310,000, equaling $1.8 million for special ed out-of-district tuitions from the operating budget. The circuit breaker reimbursement, estimated to be the $1.2 million that I mentioned earlier. Of that amount, about $720,000 will need to help fund the out-of-district tuitions. In addition to that, the IDEA grant is included in the level services budget, and that this current year was $838,000. Of that amount, $770,000 went to out-of-district tuitions. This budget plan should help withstand the 14% increase to the out-of-district tuition costs that the district will see in FY24. We are hopeful that legislature could, we don't know, we're not hearing, that they could possibly open up additional funding to help districts with this astronomical increase. Because I'm projecting $3.2 million in out-of-district tuitions next year for just this district. So that's over $400,000. So taking it from different pieces and incorporating it with everything else, I believe that's why I've increased the operational by $310,000 in that area. I hope that's clear how I wrote that.
And that was a question that we had asked. I had asked specifically of Mr. Howgate. And he had indicated that it definitely is the avenue for additional funding for the increase for out-of-district tuition has to come through the legislature. And so he said, stay on top of your state senator and your local representatives. And so we will do that. Not only is there a meeting coming up in March, but I think we're going to reach out to Senator Oliveira and Representative Pupolo and Representative Ash within the next couple of weeks, just to see where they are on this and push them a little bit so that, they know that we're looking for any kind of resources and support that they can give.
Because typically every year, I always incorporate a 2 to 3% increase in out-of-district tuitions. They're done at the state level, approved at the state level, and they vary depending on the needs of the students that go there. We've never seen a 14% increase. And again, this is across the state. It's not just us, it's every district. So Misery Loves Company, I guess, just want you to know we're not alone.
And one of the things that we have to be careful of is we know our circuit breaker is going to grow. However, you can't just use the growth of circuit breaker to offset increased costs. You have to balance it out by increasing your operational budget that the district puts forth, which we've done here. And so we think we're in a decent position to at least withstand the increase, but certainly we'll look for additional support anywhere.
It's a very valid point. It's called maintenance of effort, and the auditors look for that every year. And if they're not seeing growth in our operational budget as we are in the IDEA or the circuit breaker, then we will be out of compliance and we will be, written out, so to speak. So
Pam, $1.2 million is the estimated reimbursement for circuit breaker next year.
I'm using the same number. I'm comfortable, and actually that could even grow a little bit, but I wasn't comfortable to say, I think 40 or 42 students.
How much of that did we use this year? How much of circuit breaker are we projected to use this year?
I believe it's 700 and
So 500,000 more next year.
possibly.
And that's less than you're gonna use 14 million. You're projecting 14 million from circuit breaker later in your narrative.
Not 14 million.
1.4, I'm sorry.
If only.
And so, no, 1.2. I'm estimating the same figure, the 1.2.
1.2 to receive.
Right.
Yes,
We're gonna use 1.4 as a source. We're gonna use to fund the budget. Is that what you say here?
No, I don't believe
I
we're
think that's what I'm saying.
next year in circuit breaker.
Bottom of the next page.
And
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Oh, you got ahead of me. So this was from the last,
So just the bottom of page 2, the third bullet.
so LPS FY 23 is projected. Okay. So I was honing more in on
That's
FY
this year.
24. So yes, if I wrote that, then that is accurate
That's
for this
this year.
current year.
That's this year.
So we're gonna use less circuit breaker next, no, so we're receiving less than we're spending in circuit breaker. Because next year's reimbursement is based on this year's.
Correct.
expenditures.
Correct.
We spent 1.4 in 20.
Yes, we've had many changes this current year.
So is that gonna draw down our balance going forward
Yes,
and create another cliff?
but that's why I also
I don't-
the operational budget. It's important that that continues to grow and not just rely on the circuit.
Right, but we're
Also-
using more circuit breaker than we're taking in. This year, we're taking in less than we're gonna use of it next year.
Should we take?
No, I disagree with that.
We're actually, we have a very conservative number for what we feel we're gonna take in. I think we're actually gonna bring in more considering the costs that we're spending above the threshold of roughly $47,000 for the students that we're reporting in circuit breaker. And also, I don't think transportation was part of this last year.
It was part of it, but the transportation, out of district transportation, is now part of the formula for circuit breaker. And it goes up in increments over 4 years, so that it was gradual. It's either 75% or 100%. So it went up just by 25%. So that is going to increase, but, I wasn't comfortable to make it any higher than that. We could also, get extraordinary relief, which is, I don't know a ton about it. I'm gonna throw out that I believe it's if your costs this year were 125% more than the prior year, you can qualify for this additional funding. But I think it's all this money that goes into a pot, and it's kind of, I don't want to say first come, first serve, but they're gonna distribute how they can. And if we're seeing our numbers up, so are other districts, because I do believe we're not alone, and this is, part cause of the pandemic, and we're still analyzing the individual. And I will certainly sit down and do a more detailed analysis, I think, on our current expenditure and our next year expenditure.
Do we have?
Oh, you have it in the chart, actually.
Yeah, but
First page.
We have students that qualify for circuit breaker that are not out of district paid
Yes.
tuition
yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we will have more than
than just
than
that.
the out of district
Yeah.
students. Absolutely.
So then we're definitely going to use more than we're taking in.
Probably.
I'm just worried about that.
Well, I mean, you
because
see that- you
with
see that-
everything else,
The history here, what we take in and what we spend.
right?
So we've always spent less,
We take in the net claim. Is that what we take in?
as far as I'm understanding, right, on that chart?
Or no, it's CB.
No,
No,
it's the net, yeah, the net claim, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we take in
That's,
75% of that.
yeah, 75% of the net claim.
Oh, it's that one,
No.
right? We took in 1 million
Yes, 1.2,
1.2,
in 23, 1.2.
right,
current year.
current year we're in.
Yep.
Right, so if we're gonna spend 1.2 on out of district. And we still have in district, we're gonna use more than 1.2.
Right, but I have to use, it's,
Whatever you
I
roll.
have to be careful, what I roll over has to be expended. And then we
We're
also,
gonna roll over less than we're gonna take in. So we're not gonna roll over a full year.
right, no,
Which is
we haven't.
usual.
Well,
Yes,
Normally, we do roll it over.
not always.
not always.
Okay.
We've been trying to do that, and that's why it's so important. When it's very unpredictable. The move-ins and the changes, CF plays a role. I mean, there's so many moving pieces behind the scenes. That, it's confidential and we don't talk about it, nor would we, but there's many moving pieces here. So we have been trying to build that up so that we could withstand if we did have like a large move-in or some
So
changes.
the proposed budget uses a higher percentage of circuit breaker than the current year's budget. Is that a fair statement? Are you going to that for larger source than you did this? year?
Yes,
Yeah,
that is correct.
So that-
I'm also
that's not sustainable though.
The operational budget. Well, so.
Well, I know that, but that comes from a different place. That's a different
It
source.
does, but I use many sources behind the scenes. So then is the answer then that we increase the operational by 500,000?
Well, that's
I mean,
that's the
it's a-
problem though, Pam, because the 3.7 takes into account the sources. And if we change the sources and use more of the sources irregularly than we normally would, then those sources will run
Has an
down
effect.
over the years, right? And
It doesn't
so,
always go up though. Every year is a little different, Greg, with special ed.
Certain.
Yes, with the expenses, it's not just the.
right, but we're relying more on circuit breaker in next year in 24 operating budget than we are in 23.
You're utilizing it because of the 14%.
On a higher percent, yes,
Yes,
right. I'm just worried about
Yeah.
that.
which is why
For the next year and the year after and the year after.
Yep.
it's why I think the legislature has
Needs to
a higher chance of helping us on that. Because every district is dealing with it.
Yeah, I know.
It's not a great spot to be in, but
It's not. But
Right, but our sources, so what we really need to look at is last year's operating budgets, because I know I'm getting ahead again, but. Like we're showing the 4%, it's just the two positions. Proposed
yeah,
position.
right.
We get from the 3.7 to the 4.
Mhm.
But we're not showing any of the 15 paras, and we're also using more circuit breakers, so we're taking from a different source.
I'm not sure I'm understanding the 15
And,
paras.
They're still not in this,
Yes, they are. They're in
they're
the
paid for at
37.
ESSER.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they
So
are.
you're getting it. No, they're not. So
Right
you're
here.
getting ahead of yourself.
Okay, I am. I'm sorry. And maybe I am, Gordon. Yes, I am getting ahead of myself. Okay, I'm sorry. He's right.
So there are a lot of moving pieces. You're right. And we do need to talk about them. You're right. And it's my job to make sure that you guys understand this 14% and the para negotiations and the moving all of your folks up, all the different bargaining units. We're talking $1.2 million.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And I'm worried about that, and that's why I'm worried about new FTEs, and I'm worried about the taxation of the town residents and going for a new high school. So I know this is we're all worried about the same thing, but if we start using other sources more so than we rely on traditionally, those sources will dry up.
So, but we always use the three sources for out of district tuition are operational budget, IDEA, and circuit breaker.
Right.
Right.
So,
Always.
so
But we're
Yeah.
leaning more on circuit breaker.
This year.
This budget,
this year,
24.
yes. A little bit more.
A little.
But once you do that, then it's in the operating budget. You have to do it again the year after.
You don't have to. There's a couple things that you have to,
Every year.
right.
Changes and the 14% is.
You know, one of the things that,
No, I know, but once
Michael
you put it
Fredette's
into
working
the
on-
If
We
you
get it.
use it as a source in the
But
operating
you're-
budget.
But we still don't really know, do we?
but also
You have
it's,
4%, that's all. I'm
it's a
saying.
question of,
It's a lot.
it is a lot.
I agree.
But it's also a question of how we manage and what resources we have in district so that you keep more students in district. And we have done, and Meadowbrook has probably been the school that has handled the most of this. I think we've done an exceptional job of attempting to keep students in district and keep our out of district numbers down. And I think our families partner with us on that. You know, they're not looking necessarily to send their students out. However, you're right, that even if we were to keep everything status quo, it's still going up 14%. So we have to think about that. However, in the long run, the better we manage and provide resources in district, the lower our costs are and the less we rely on circuit breaker for out of district tuition.
But the less circuit breaker will reimburse as well.
True,
If we spend less, we receive less.
true.
Relatively better off keeping in district, I
Right.
imagine.
Yes. And being skillful money managers.
All we ask.
Hey Blair.
Okay.
Skillful manager.
So level services budget continues to maintain some paraprofessionals, custodians, and permanent building subs on ESSER 3 grant. This pandemic relief grant will continue to help the district manage the ever-evolving challenges that the pandemic has had on our students and staff. We do begin negotiations with paraprofessionals tomorrow, as Mr. Smith mentioned.
So just to speak to that a little bit, because we didn't go on into the specificity that maybe we can next time, and there was a reason for that. So this budget, the current budget we're in, is built on carrying in ESSER 3 permanent substitutes per building, up to 4 for Meadowbrook. Not all have been filled. So we'll have to get that chart for you in terms of what's been filled. That's this current school year. It also carries up to 6 paraprofessionals. That was where we were looking at what is appropriate staffing for the preschool, but not 15.
I meant permanent subs, not paraprofessionals.
Okay.
I was misspoken.
And that's FY 23, not FY 24. So I'm not even speaking to the
But-
level services budget yet.
24 does not include the
I haven't-
permanent
haven't-
subs.
haven't gotten
I
there yet.
misspoke. You're
Yeah.
right.
Just working through
Yeah.
FY 23.
No, I appreciate it.
Okay. Now I can't give you the actual hourly, but every building with Meadowbrook needing the most has used ESSER funding this year to supplement their custodial staff. We have a sub who's a pretty consistent sub at the high school. And we're paying that through ESSER. We used it definitely in the summer because we run now summer academies and our special education programming. And at Meadowbrook, because we didn't add an FTE, we're using ESSER to bring on a part-time custodian in order to deal with the fact that we expanded our preschool and we're running lunches for preschool through grade 2. And traditionally, we've had one gay custodian on, and that's just too much to deal with all of that. And so the last 2 years, we have run or supported a custodian, part-time custodian at Meadowbrook through ESSER. That has not been moved over into the level services for FY 24. That's now a request as an FTE. We'll get to that. I haven't just working
How
on.
much of ESSER did we use in 23 for staff? Dollar amount, right?
That's
I would want to do,
Because we used 2 and 3, ESSER 2 and 3 this year.
ESSER 2, yes, ESSER.
2 and 3, young, we already used up for the year.
right.
So 2 and 3 we used this year.
Yeah,
Correct, we finished 2.
Finished
Right.
at the beginning of this year, and we moved into 3.
Okay.
And so we can bring that back. So all of that is on ESSER currently in terms of personnel. Going forward, as we looked at building next year's budget, and Pam, please let me know if I'm
No, you go right
in
ahead.
any way misrepresenting.
You're doing a great job.
We moved over 3 of the 6 paras into this operational budget. Now, we have yet to even hit our number of paras that we budgeted for. We budgeted for 108. We have yet to hit 108. Actually, as I think Wednesday of last week, I talked to Tammy Brown, our payroll manager, and active that day were 100 paras. So we go up and
Two
down.
just
quite a bit.
resigned last
Who had just resigned. And so, you know, the goal would be obviously to hit the number that we actually budgeted for. And I don't know if we'll do that this year at any given point.
So
But-
does it add para FTEs? You're saying in the operating budget, it's 3 more?
3. It does, 3.
Into the operating budget, but
Yes.
not into the overall.
That's the age old.
Yeah.
Philosophy though.
Well, I would
It
disagree.
is.
I would disagree.
I know you do.
Okay. I guess I'm part of the age old philosophy
Or I am, one of us.
108 on my.
on
spreadsheet.
paper.
On
Paper.
paper.
On paper.
6 are Title I.
Okay.
6 were under ESSER. This are under ESSER this year. We'd like to see 3 of those
6 of the 108.
over into the operating budget. And 1 is under the tuition account.
So we had 104.
Thank you.
I mean, so I
And-
feel like 10 years ago, we had 104
At
paras
that time, we were able to
now. So I think we're,
able to decrease them
yeah,
within
had-
those 10 years, pre-pandemic.
right.
We got down to 96,
Nothing's-
including the Title I paras.
Right.
And then the pandemic hit and all of a sudden our needs have gone through the roof again.
Yeah.
And we're
I understand.
trying and I.
Fine, but I'm just gonna state it, adding positions through a grant and then funding them
I
through
understand.
the operating budget.
I know.
So
We could talk some about that, you know.
But it's really adding FTEs this year.
but the
Because we don't
FTEs,
acknowledge the addition of FTEs last year.
we did,
No,
you acknowledged them quite well.
no, that's not, they're not in the 12. No, I didn't though.
did.
That's not included in the 12.
Acknowledge that they were under the ESSER grant.
We did. We acknowledged
They
all.
would qualify for benefits. They,
Right,
The town already knew about the permanent subs.
right. But once we move them over,
We're not moving over the,
we're
moving over
3
paraprofessionals.
paras.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are new FTE. Well, I know they're not new FTE,
So
but they're.
so
new
let me just say
budget
something
FTEs.
that makes, and I know I've said this to you outside of a public meeting, but I think it's worth saying in a public meeting. So the paraprofessionals are a unit that are somewhat unique. They're a large unit. They're just the second largest unit, just a little bit smaller than our teachers unit. But a third of our paras are very transient and, you know, not specific people, but usually a third of the number we hire are very transient. And so that means a couple things. One, they may or may not take benefits while they're here, but they don't stay on the sort of the town rolls for benefits. And then we also have a third to a half that don't stay with us for 10 years, even if they stay with us for a year or two. And they have to be here with us 10 years to be vested in order to have benefits, say, at the retirement time. And so that's a group that's very different than our teachers, who generally do come here and stay and then do become vested, probably as they start with us, take the benefit and so forth. That doesn't mean that, a half to 2/3 of our paras don't stay with us and reach that level. But so that's just something that's interesting as we think about that. We have yet to even get to the 108 that we wanted to budget for, be it through ESSER and the operational budget. So certainly the 6 that we're missing never took benefits. So that's a good thing.
Right, but we have the potential to still fill them at any,
We do have the potential.
and hopefully we do.
But the other, and hopefully we do. So then just on the other side, I just want to give you, and I'm not going to use the name because there's a lot of vendors, but we did a report today. So one of our contracted service vendors that helps us with special education services, who would be utilized as well when we come up short with staffing our paraprofessionals. In 2020, we spent 113,000 with them. In 2021, we spent 213,000 with them. In 2022, we spent 377,000 with them. We are projected this year to spend 645,000 with them. So you are correct.
How are we
Adding
gonna pay for
FTEs.
that?
We are paying for it. We are already paying for it.
I said contracted services, some of it was circuit breaker, and yes.
So I just want you to realize that, as you say, okay, and I am understanding what you're saying. I get it. I'm just saying that it's always a balance.
Yeah.
And that's a balance that eats away at circuit breaker and these other things as quickly as, or maybe more quickly, because they go up, I don't think they're governed by the same group in terms of whether their pricing goes up the 14%. Because this was OSD that allowed that.
Right.
Correct.
No, that's
These guys,
private. No,
in the private,
that's
they can
different.
go up whatever they want.
That, because it's not a tuition, that's a contracted service, so it's different.
So similarly, when we have to go through an agency for a CNA or even a registered nurse, what we would pay hourly if they were our employee, and we do have at-will employees, as needed for these things, is going to be far different than what the agency pays. Recently, we've done more agency because they're faster and we've gotten more, we haven't gotten the applicant pool that we used to get once we advertise for a CNA or a registered nurse. But that's the trade-off. So I just wanted I came prepared today.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, well,
Good info. But it's a lot of.
I knew that.
I mean, it's expensive. No, it's, you just point,
Yeah.
so we have to absorb all these additional costs.
But it's one or the other. Like if you can actually fund the
Yeah,
FTEs,
I know.
it's
It's
less
our.
money.
Cheaper.
Because they're hitting you up for premium
Yeah,
and you're paying what that employee's gonna cost plus the benefits and you can hope.
Overhead.
and what's,
They're not paying the employee what we pay them.
No, not at all.
and then the other spin on that is that then we're filling it with a contracted service, so that person's working next to this para here,
Yeah.
who knows that they're making more. It's caused a lot of
Mhm.
issues that I'm sure are gonna come up and we recognize that, respectfully so. We're doing the best we can. We try to be very transparent with everyone, knowing what we need to talk about in negotiations, so,
And this actually may be a good time to invite, if I may,
yes.
Odie in, only because she's been waiting, but also as we look at the level services budget, we are proposing in the level services budget that we change our preschool model because we're not keeping up with the referrals. And again, I don't know when this will start to subside, but it's only increased the last few years in terms of the severity of need that we're seeing coming into our youngest schools. Our youngest school, we only have one. And also just some of the behaviors we're seeing with students who say pre-pandemic had been in some of our programs in our district and have done quite well, now are struggling a little bit more. And so these are all things we're very aware of, but just to give you some numbers, and I know that Mrs. Lodi probably can add to these. Just doing a quick breakdown with Mr. Fredette's help between last year, December, and this year, December. And these are students who are being referred as they turn age 3 or 2.9, I believe. Am I correct on that? Yeah. Last year in December, we had 24 referrals. This year in December, we had 45. Last year at the end of the year total, we had 41. So this December, we were already ahead of the pace for the entire year of last year. Of that, last year, let's see if I'm reading this correctly, 22 of the 24 referrals in December were eligible for special education. This year of our 45 referrals as of December, 38 became eligible.
So we need to make sure we have a spot for all of them.
What it does is it takes our preschool ratios of what we started the year with, where we had 7 students on IEPs and 8 peer role models, and it flip-flops, and then it crowds the room incredibly. It makes Mrs. Lodi and Mrs. Shea's life very challenging. And every day they do a beautiful job of managing that and supporting our students. But just to keep the numbers going, after complimenting Mrs. Lodi there, our walk-in that we shifted here at last year at the end of the year, and we wanted to at least take that element off of Meadowbrook as we revamped the preschool. Last year, we had as of December, 9 referrals or 9 people getting walk-in services. Right now, we have 19. So we're actually now starting to figure out a way to bring some of those services, walk-in services, back at Meadowbrook. That was a discussion that was just had recently. But with that, we do need to make sure that we have spaces for all students who become eligible. First are referred, we have to be prepared for that, but then become eligible for services. So we will have to revamp our preschool model for next year, not for this year, for next year. And Mrs. Lodi, if I'm taking any of your thunder, please stop me, because I know that you're going to outline some things for us in terms of preschool.
I don't have a lot of thunder left.
Okay.
Just to add on to the numbers in terms of what Gordon just shared, in addition to those referrals, we have 27 pending referrals right now. Ones we know about, that number will absolutely increase.
So that's in addition to the 45.
Of those 27, 4 already have IEPs out waiting for signature, so they definitely have qualified, and 5 are already in our program as peers, and we know that they're likely to qualify. So just to add on to the numbers piece, it's not slowing down. I had come to you guys, I think about a year ago now, sharing how disproportionate our program had become when we had 2 classrooms with half-day sessions each. We were incredibly off balance with our peer to IEP ratio, which is mandated by DESE. And we started off the year this year in a really good place with the addition of additional classrooms. We opened up 3 full-day classrooms, which are primarily for 4-year-old students. We kept 1 classroom in the half-day sessions for 3-year-old students, and then we added a substantially separate classroom for students with significant and complex needs, because in addition to our general referral rate increasing, the severity of needs of the students that we're seeing is something I've never seen before in my career. And I have worked in administration for near on 22 years now. And I don't see this slowing down, which is kind of what I had predicted. We have now as of January 3rd, exceeded the DESE mandated ratio, maximum ratio that you can have in 2 of our classrooms already. We are at capacity in the other 2. So with these pending referrals coming in, that number is just going to keep changing. what my proposal is for next year, because obviously we can't keep adding classrooms. Meadowbrook's only so large, and unless you want to build me a new building too, which I appreciate. I've got nowhere left to put folks. So we, to Heather's point, we cannot turn away students on an IEP. We have to accept them. And so in order to accommodate this ever-growing need, I am proposing we shift our current model a little bit, where we have the 3-day full day classrooms and 1 half day in the sub-separate. Almost like to flip that and go to 1 full day, 3 half day, and the sub-separate. This would allow for the addition of 14 more students on IEPs without being out of whack with those ratios, and 16 students that would be considered peer partners, at least when they start. They often shift to become students on IEPs over the course of time. This would really help by not keep me from asking you for more teachers, which I know you don't want to give us, Greg. But I also don't have.
Not that he doesn't want to give them.
That's right.
I don't have this
About
for them either, which is
You're welcome.
a struggle at our building. We're bursting at the seams. We have 4 and 5 teachers sharing classrooms in some cases, which we had to do last year in order to add that additional preschool classroom that we did at the very end. So that is what I am here to propose as a change for next year in order to help us stay within the DESE mandated ratios without actually adding any staff. The main idea would be also to put the 3-year-old in the morning session and the 4-year-olds in the afternoon for the most part. The 3-year-olds don't do so great in the afternoon. That's usually when they're napping. So we'd like to try to do that. And the other thing we hadn't really fully anticipated, or I don't want to say anticipated, but thought through, was the fact that most of the new students coming in on IEPs over the course of the school year, as we start taking more students, are 3. And so we left 1 3-year-old half-day program, and that got full real quick. So we've actually had to start adding some 3-year-old half-day students into our 4-year-old full-day program, which caused us to do a little bit of shifting midday and moving around of lunches and things in order to accommodate them into that program.
I was wondering, you had mentioned the 19 walk-ins. Would any of those obviously you need to have day, I'm fine, like with whatever you want, but I mean, are there parents out there? Because I know someone who was like a walk-in, right? And I was happy to have her be a walk-in, you know what I mean? As opposed to putting her in the program. I mean, do any of these parents who are working through the IEP process, would they prefer a walk-in on a Tuesday, Thursday, because they're Monday, Wednesday, Friday, pre-K, like pre-K somewhere else?
The preschool students that we have in our program now are more significant need. They're not kids that would just qualify walk-in.
Okay,
If they just qualify walk-in, that's what they're offered.
Okay.
is walk-in.
all right.
Can I ask a question, Mrs. Lodi? Thank you for your very creative proposal. It sounds like though, is that a Band-Aid for a much bigger problem looking down the road? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you're proposing something that's extremely creative in how to address this short term, but with the need that's going to be ever growing, what would your ideal plan look like?
Building.
School, build me an addition. I have lots of different creative ideas for that, including possibly relocating preschool to a different location so that it can expand the way it needs to expand.
Because it does need to expand. I mean, this is obviously a
It's-
national trend that you're dealing with here in East Long Meadow.
And I don't have that magic 8 ball, so it's hard to say, is this truly pandemic based? And we're gonna see this come back down the other side. I will say in my 9 years here in the district, I've only seen it grow. I have not seen that number start shrinking. I do think it is definitely compounded by the pandemic. I think a lot of these little guys not only didn't have the socialization that they needed during the most critical developing years of their life, they also didn't have access to early intervention services.
Yes.
Those were provided remotely right up until this year.
Mhm.
And so it's really hard to deliver speech or occupational therapy to a 2-year-old via an iPhone screen.
Right.
And so they really did not get the services, and that has only compounded how far behind they are. And so I do think a lot of these kids would have been eligible anyways, but I think that the severity of the need that we're seeing is that much more for that reason, because they missed those services. But yeah, I don't know that I see this
There's literally no more
on the
space
trends.
left at Meadowbrook.
Right, so we can't just put a Band-Aid on it. I mean, shouldn't we be thinking of a different type of solution? I mean, again, I appreciate the creativity, but we're talking about a group of children that are coming through that are demonstrating that they have incredibly high needs, and it's, probably not going to slow down. I don't know.
Did they ever get the modulars that were supposed to be new? Did that like happen ever?
Yes,
Okay,
Meadowbrook, yeah.
yeah,
yeah, and that same type of construction is gonna happen to Mountain View
Mountain View.
summer.
But yeah, I think moving forward, I mean,
I mean,
what are we
it's,
gonna do?
it's most likely not something that you can put together for the next school year. But some of the things that Mrs. Lodi mentioned and we've talked about is, do you look for a completely separate preschool and then you more or less run a preschool off-site?
I mean, 5 teachers in one room.
Yeah.
It's unacceptable.
Mrs. Shea gives up her office multiple days a
Mhm.
week in order to
Unex-
allow ELL instruction to happen, and
Shouldn't happen. That shouldn't be happening.
we're tight,
Right.
very tight.
And God bless you all for, I mean, you're making it work. You're doing what you need to do, but to me, that just, it's not okay.
I have a question about those students that are full day right now. So they would be forced to go half day.
I do have a plan for that. The
good.
students that are in our full day program right now, most of them are 4 years old and will be aging in to kindergarten next year. There will be, from my estimation, based on who we've got in front of us right now, there will be 2 or 3 students that were literally 4.0 that are just missing the kindergarten cutoff. They would be given preference for the slots in the 4-year-old program. I'm certainly not going to tell them now you have to move your child back to half day. So they would get the first spots in that full day program. The other spots would be offered up to 4-year-old peers who are interested and then drawn by lottery. The spots for students on the IEPs, that's a team decision. And it's based a lot on the amount of services the child needs. If you have a child in a half-day preschool program and they're receiving occupational therapy, speech therapy, music therapy, physical therapy, by the time all those services are provided, they're essentially not in their preschool classroom. Those would be the students that would be given preference for getting the spots into the full day program, those whose services really exceed the amount of time within the school day. And the others would remain in the half-day program.
And we'd still have the substantially separate.
Yeah, I would not propose any
Okay.
changes
Yeah.
to that program.
So we still have the program that would handle some of our students with much more significant needs.
The student peers, we charge a tuition currently.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I imagine that would be adjusted next year.
The tuition itself wouldn't change. I did out the math because I was a little bit concerned about how that was gonna look. Because our half-day program is $2,200 for tuition and the full day is $6,000. I was really hoping they would level out because we can accept more peers in this model, but it would be a small reduction, I believe about 25,000 reduced in the amount of tuition we can pull in. But that $25,000 in my mind is offset by the fact that we're able to accommodate those additional 14 students and 16 peers without adding a teacher.
Right.
And paraprofessional support staff in order to do that.
So I know you need to have, because some of the kiddos get so much that they need the full day, but should you moving forward and that you're able to accommodate the kids that are already full day, should the parents be made aware that there is the possibility that they might be in third for like a full day, but potentially by the time they hit 4, they may be, just to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, you know, moving forward to next year, the year after next, if you need to have the another half-day program. You know, maybe we should do something like that. So at least they know, yeah, you're full day this year, but we can't guarantee it, just so they don't feel like they're getting the rug pulled out from under them. Just
Do we
think,
have a lot of 3-year-olds that are full day that would be
We
in.
don't, no, the 3-year-olds that we currently have that are full day.
no, I'm saying, but as they move forward, at some point, they're gonna be that 4-year-old and they're gonna, you know, what I guess what I'm saying is you're saying like you had mentioned, gee, they were full day this year. Are we gonna make them half day? And like the parents are like, what are we gonna do? But I guess I'm saying that with that full day program, although I know many of them have so many services that they have to be there the full day. But if you should maybe just warn people that maybe that full day program this year, they might not have full day next year, just so they understand that they're warned that if we need to, you have so many kids by next year that you have to do another 2 half-day programs. I'm just saying, think about that moving forward, because this is,
I would think with
did that make sense? I don't know if that made.
decision tonight, we're gonna start our communication with families to make sure that they know not only will our students who are currently in the program get first priority, then we'll be able to clearly identify for families coming in, whether they be peer role models or students who are referred, here's what we'll be offering next year.
Did you think that families are just unaware, like you've got young moms out there and, you know, you hear about early intervention. Are the pediatricians at this point catching things, mentioning it to parents? It almost seems like because we hid for 2 years, maybe some of these younger parents don't, or older parents don't even realize that there is early intervention. You know, I think there was like a whole, you'd hear so much information, you'd see ads about it and stuff like that. In the last couple of years, you don't see as much. And I'm wondering if the word's just not out there that if you're, you know, the pediatrician should be pushing it to get them into the early intervention. So hopefully, because I think that there is a big block there and I've noticed it too. It seems like something's up, you know what I mean? And it's gotta be that they're not.
I think that's part of it. I think another piece of it, honestly, is people stayed home with their kids.
Yeah.
And so their kids, they weren't around other kids of the same age and didn't realize necessarily that their child wasn't developing
Yeah.
in a typical manner because they didn't have exposure to that.
And especially these kids, they were at home.
Yeah.
They weren't seeing any other kids.
We have kindergartners coming in this year for the first time in my career that are not potty trained.
Mhm.
Many, many, many.
Mhm.
Yeah. We're in February and they're still not potty trained. So the impact.
My
is
thoughts on that. but I couldn't mouth shut.
Big.
It's all grade levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just,
No, I know. I remember last year, second graders not knowing how.
I know,
Right,
Lord
it's-
help.
but it's
Different.
all grade levels. You're seeing some.
Severity, yeah. Yep.
And I mean, in the SEL, I mean, there's a big need for it right
Right.
now.
We're seeing a huge impact.
Big segue.
That is a perfect way of,
Next page.
Yeah, how many students pay tuition? How many of the peer role models do we have?
Is around now 48? I don't remember.
Accommodate,
You're talking about now, right now?
right now, yeah.
we can currently accommodate 40. This
Next
would
year.
add an additional 16, bringing us up to 56. But
Not all.
Right, if-
we're all been paying the full tuition for the half day.
So currently there was 24 paying the 6,000, but remember, if they're then deemed IEP eligible, then the tuition stops. So it never comes to the full projection. So we always kind of try to be careful about
But I'm
that.
wondering if we should
Paying the
consider
2200.
raising tuition.
16 peers
In the 2,200?
at the 2,200.
I was thinking the same thing, Greg.
What's
To
that?
make up to 25,000,
Say
so
that again. I-
raise tuition, increase to the cost.
Gotta be at that market level that's acceptable too. I don't know what that would be right now.
Last year.
But they did.
I know, but we.
Last year
So we increased last year.
But,
And we're only in.
to 2,200.
Yeah, they just
That's all we're
increased
putting
it.
in that next
right,
year.
but basically we're taking 25,000 away from that.
True. But we're bringing in a projected 153,000, so you should be able to handle it.
But you thought we were gonna be 25,000 less in tuition.
Right, but even with the 25,000 less, it's 153 and change,
Mhm.
153,600.
That we didn't have a year ago.
No, it's just what the revenue would be if we go to this new model,
And so
which is why we wouldn't add other positions.
Staff onto
it's
there.
180.
Instead of 100, yeah, 170.
70.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, the difference is 179,200 versus 153,600.
But a year ago, we didn't even have that because we
No,
weren't
we-
charging as much. You know, we had a
Charging
smaller.
100.
and fewer students.
And what did we carry on it 2 years ago? Was it para and a teacher?
I believe that it has been, Gordon. Yes, because
We always carried.
for 3 years, we had
Now the teacher's not on.
I don't think a teacher was on there. I think.
Maybe not the
I-
full salary.
That'd have been your teacher. There, we had a tuitioned in student from another district that was coming to one of our programs at a higher grade level. I believe it was a Birchland Park teacher that I had in there, or a high school teacher. I can't remember.
And currently in this level services budget, we have a paraprofessional and a preschool.
That's
teacher.
correct. Yes. Because that other student that I referred to is not here any longer. That tuition stopped.
But to raise Beth $500, I don't think that's gonna throw it out of whack.
No, I mean, I just, did you have parents like jumping to come and it wasn't a problem with the price?
I will say that the $6,000 for a full day was a deterrent for a few families. I hesitate to raise tuition again because I'm running into a lot of trouble with Carline at the end of the day. And adding more preschool to Carline at the end of the day has been an incredible challenge and is part of what has made our Carline even longer. And so I'm also toying with the idea of dismissing slightly earlier for preschool to get them out of the Carline line in order to keep us ending closer to on time. And so to do that and slightly shorten that and then increase the cost,
I don't think we can increase it again.
I have a hard time with that.
And we don't budget the positions to use up all of the revenue. Like that would not be wise of us to do at all. I think we're-
I would have to say though, I agree with Greg on this. I think it's something we have to consider. Like when we're thinking about every curveball that we've discussed during this meeting that we're experiencing, to make a consideration potentially to get ahead and be proactive, and who knows, based on the numbers that Renee shared, what we'll be looking at next year, that if we can at least close that gap and maybe build a small cushion, it might be a prudent decision to try to figure that out now, rather than end up behind the 8 ball, so to speak, next year.
Yeah, even if we didn't get it all back.
I mean, if you raised it $300, that's times the 48, that's 14,400.
Yeah.
So.
And maybe we do a market analysis. I would
They did
be
that
willing
last year.
to guess, though, that even this year, given some of the price increases that you've seen, Pam,
Oh.
that a market analysis this year would show that we are
So
most
different.
likely far below what half-day programs are in the private market especially.
So Renee, were you thinking of reducing the day by like what, 10 minutes?
Bumping back the morning and afternoon each by,
Okay, so they're not in the way of Carline. And I know frequently a lot of the schools will do that in terms of, to be out of the way of bus line and Carline and all that stuff. So it's not, but you gotta think about that too. If it's doing 10 minutes.
Reducing the day.
Well, it's each section.
Section.
Half day.
Yeah.
I just can't handle any more volume in Carline.
I know.
Yeah, I bet. Oh, Honestly.
Yeah, and that was not even, we've now added all the extra preschool kids and now if we're adding even more next year.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to do like a little bump, I could see, but to make it like a $500, I think, and then you're shortening the day a little bit, and then knowing that they're not going to have the opportunity for a full day because it's really not there anymore, that can be a deterrent to a lot of families that want the full day or feel they need it because they'll have grandparents on the back ends. I don't know.
I think that would be better received if it were a whole new group of kids where nobody knew the difference. My worry is that if we make that shift, which we haven't decided yet, to help alleviate some of the Carline, we're shortening the day for families that are already here in our program, experiencing our program. And then adding $500 onto their tuition for a slightly shorter day.
Right, but if the market analysis shows us that it to go somewhere else would be substantially more, I think
Yep.
we could take that in light of the budget situation that we're in. I think we should be as creative as possible, so to create an additional shortcoming.
No, Greg,
Increase-
this isn't a money-making proposition. This is a try to get.
I want to fund the staff, Beth. I'm not looking to make money off it.
Students, if it's, I guess I feel like yes, it's less money, but it's more money than we had this time last year for our pre-K, even counting into the teachers. We're not at a loss, are we? So I feel
No,
like,
but in order to stay ahead of not being at a loss, I think that's the concern. Like, look at, we have more than what we had previously, but we also have a demand and a need that is far exceeding what we've seen previously.
yeah, I
Hey, how many
don't know.
days are the students in school? So if I was just thinking, how many?
176, I believe. Right on
It's a
that?
few days shorter.
I just supported it.
176?
I believe
Is that
so.
what you said?
Yeah.
So 2,200 divided by the one. I'm just curious what the daily amount is, and the daily amount, this might put it into perspective, is $12.50 per day.
Well,
We're going to be
so-
hard pressed to find a daycare that is going to provide the types of services that students are receiving for $12 a day.
For example, Roots Learning Center in East Long Meadow, granted it's full day, but their daily is $76.
So that was very good
For us,
information.
that's full day.
And this,
Per
this
day.
was per day. So this was for the 2,200,
40.
of course. So
I can certainly.
First thing that happens is kids don't sign up, and then we've learned our lesson. If they sign up, it doesn't matter. But I think 500 is, I think that's.
if you jumped it
Asking a lot.
2,500, which is a 300 increase, that's $14.20 a day,
A day.
a day
For half a day.
20 cents.
for the half day. That's correct.
Maybe I'll put that little breakdown. in
Right? It's nice.
the Application packet.
No, we could. We
It is.
can
I-
compare.
Because,
Daily costs.
To have in there that.
I mean, if it is the 176, that's the number I use. The
176 per week?
No, 176 days
Days.
that they go. I wasn't sure what the number.
Okay.
It's not the 180.
$14 a day.
Yeah, because they start Tuesday after Labor Day.
Okay.
Damn, that's a great deal.
Right? You think, yeah, it is.
The deal.
Oh, that was a very valid point.
$14 a day. I'm in.
Come on over.
I will.
I'll put you to work.
I like being.
So what are you guys thinking about? Get it to 25? Or are you thinking the full 500?
Wait, are we voting on this price right now?
That's up to the committee.
That's rolling around.
Would like, if we
That was-
can, to have some direction to go.
But not 500.
Model that we're proposing so that we can continue to build the preschool as well as this year's budget. This year's budget development will continue, but like your endorsement of the model that we're proposing to go to the half day.
All right, I think that was a good idea, Renee, for what you've got to deal with. So. Okay, how do we even,
Well, are we gonna address the tuition or no?
I don't know, is that something?
I'd like more information
Yeah,
on that before we do.
We'll do another analysis.
I don't know. I think that in order to put like, it should be this much
well, I know,
more.
I mean,
I would like more information on how much more we really think it should be. I don't know how you guys. feel.
yeah, I mean, I
Okay,
think, I think
about
we need
that.
information about the tuition. I really, I mean, I had a home day for like 15, 16 years. I couldn't imagine going up all of a sudden on a parent's $500 in 1 year.
Right.
And that's for a full day program. I understand this. It's a different time. It's many years
Yeah,
later,
but when they're saying it's $12 a day, I
but,
mean, I think that puts a lot of it
Does.
into perspective as well.
but if you look at the actual.
To allow monthly
their-
payments, we don't, everybody doesn't have to pay that up front.
But you know, the daycare that you express probably starts at 7 in the morning and ends at 5:30 at night. Whereas this is, if they're getting 2 hours, they're lucky. And I'm not being to disparage that. But the fact of the matter is, by the time they get dressed up, they get undone, they get into the classroom, and they get back out. That's about how fast these programs grow. And they're fantastic and they are needed 100%. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying it's not apples to apples. So I just want us to understand that. And if the market will bear it, there's going to be somebody that'll be delighted to come in. Really, they will be. But I just,
It's 3 hours a day. You can either do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, and they're $220, this year's tuition's about $20 a day. Huh?
Busy bees.
Busy bees.
Well,
3 hours.
let's do another market analysis of that, I think, maybe for the next meeting. And do that.
Absolutely, we could do that.
I mean, we can
oh, I think,
go on this.
Yeah.
Yes, if- as long as you don't mind.
Or can we wait?
Well, for our planning, we need
We
to,
need to know.
yeah, I think we should let them know, Greg. They've got to already get stuff out for next year, right?
We're actually,
Month behind, but
Yeah.
I typically have to communicate the tuition along with that.
Right. that's what I
Yeah.
mean, it all has to come together.
but I mean, you tell us.
I know, what-
I think letting families
Can you wait
know
2
we're,
weeks for next?
we're switching, it's gonna be 3 because you have vacation in
3
there.
weeks.
I
Can
didn't.
we
you
wait
wait?
3 weeks?
I can.
So
Parents calling me every day might not be thrilled, but I,
Hey, I'm curious, do you feel?
as long as I put it out there. I'm torn. I get where people are coming from. And certainly the $12 a day puts that into a very different perspective.
Right, yeah.
I just have a hard time with increasing it, knowing that we might shorten the day by 10 minutes. But
short enough.
I'm neither here nor there.
Less time to wait in car line though, potentially for preschool parents, correct?
Yes.
Bonus.
That right there is worth $1 a day.
I don't know, should we just
Bring it
300?
back in 3 weeks.
Okay.
I mean, I would say.
I guess I feel in the end, you're gonna increase it. So let's give the woman the time she needs to get this done. We're gonna go, you can do market
not
analysis.
gonna know what
It's
the
getting
increase-
$75 a day. You're gonna turn around and go, oh, it's a deal. Let's charge 500. So I say make it 300. And then next year, if you feel like you need a little more, you can do it. But I'm not, I think I understand that she needs to get this stuff out. And I think 3 weeks is asking a lot. Because it's late.
So you want to make the change to the program and the tuition today?
I definitely think the change of the program, yes. I don't necessarily agree with the increase of the tuition, but in the end, you will vote for it. I know you're gonna vote for
Could it be that
it.
that
So
administration can have the, up to a 500 increase depending on what the market analysis shows?
maybe.
Or 3, whatever you,
And
You
then,
could put it on us to vote on it.
okay,
I would.
Yeah.
on the exact amount, not up to, okay.
Pam, if they were to increase the half-day tuition by the 300 and make it 2,500,
Mhm.
how much more would that bring in?
I think I said 14.4, so it's 300 times. So wait a minute, I was going by the numbers
Right.
here.
And half.
I was going by the 48. I wasn't touching the full amount. Because wouldn't that stay at 6?
So no, go up 3 on that too.
The 6,000 was. Okay,
How many full times are?
This is why
There will only be 8.
we need to
8.
go with this a little time.
So it's $2,400
I know.
plus the 14.
Would knowing the plan, but not the tuition help you, or do you need the whole package?
Typically, that's the first question people ask when.
How much is it?
Packet is, how much is the program?
and so
I've been getting emails too.
make sure I'm
It
getting
was
forward.
supposed to go out January, and we were supposed to have selected their partners. Tuesday. Yes.
I say we vote on it.
Sarah, how you feeling out there?
I mean, I think this is a larger conversation. I get time is of the essence, but I mean, I do think that we're being fair to the families of our community, but at the same time, we also have to be fair, even though this is a small portion of our budget, to all of the taxpayers in our community. And if we can start to offset some of these rising costs in ways such as a tuition increase that when we think about, as we said a couple of times, $14 a day, like we might be able to help put ourselves in a position to ultimately service more students over time and at the youngest of ages. So, I mean, I think if we're going to move forward, then we have to have a strong consideration for the tuition also.
Let's make it into 2 separate votes, though. Make one for the change of the program, the other for the tuition.
Can I introduce just one additional thought to that? So we're basically saying to parents, listen, we don't have the room. The town is deficient in our space. So therefore,
We do, well.
we're increasing the price on you because we have to completely restructure the day. So we're gonna add this cost to you, which for some families, that's a lot to ask. I mean.
But we will have the room, won't we, based on the shift in the model? Or am I
That's what I'm saying.
misunderstanding
Well,
that?
We will now that we're
Right.
shifting, we're restructuring everything because we, ideally, wouldn't we like to have, some more additional space for you just to expand the program, which we probably should be looking towards in the long-term sense, but we're saying we don't have what we need right now. So we're going to pass the costs along on to families. I agree with Antonella, what you originally said, which was, I don't I don't think that we should be just arbitrarily throwing a number out, 300 a year. I don't think that that's appropriate for right now. I think that we should consider leaving the price the same for this year for families and then reassess next year. Give Mrs. Lodi.
Right, were you up for?
I just wanted to get more information
Sorry if I said
before, that's okay,
Earlier.
before we voted on a
Right.
number
Just a number that we split out of the.
to increase, right?
And I don't think it was an arbitrary number. Also, I think we were trying to look at the shortfall that we were potentially creating by the difference between the two models and the cost difference. So I think that was the ultimate goal.
Get us to.
Well, the
Where we-
500 would,
The 500 would though.
100 would.
Yes.
500 would.
right? And because of the change in model creates the reduction in tuition, creates the smaller class sizes.
I completely understand
And
that.
those that have full day now will still have full day next year offered.
Mhm.
So it is what we had to offer.
I get it.
And we're going to come up against a very difficult budget season, I'm convinced. So for me, in order to try to address some of the shortfalls, I think we should do a tuition increase. But I'm one of five, so.
But I think we should pick a number, and I know doing now, you're gonna come back with the 3 or the 500. You're probably gonna come back, so.
I thought you were gonna solve it.
Yeah, no,
I have a plan.
no, just in it.
Well, let's just vote then. So do your two motions and whether we vote on the 3 or the 5, the 3 would get us. If we did the 3 on the full, then we're talking 16 out of 25, correct?
So you're saying add 3,000, I'd be 300 to the 6,000 as well?
Both, yeah, which only another 2,400 because it's 8 students.
Okay.
But that's the reason why we're losing is because 2 half days don't equal a full. That's really the crux of the issue
Correct.
here.
Yeah,
But I don't necessarily want to go up on the half. More than the full. Because the full are now more valuable or more rare slots.
Why is the full day so much? It's not just double.
The day is more than double.
Okay.
It also includes the kids being there for lunch.
Okay.
They're only coming in once, you know what I mean? They're coming in and they're leaving, that whole middle part gets. Okay, so.
So we can move to change the preschool model to include 1 full day, 3 half days, and 1 substantially separate.
correct.
Classroom.
Substantially, okay,
Reading the sheet.
I got it. All right, I move to change the preschool program at Meadowbrook School to a 1 full day classroom, 3 half day classrooms. That would be actually 6, and then 1, so it would be ultimately 6 half days,
Yeah, 6 sections.
6 sections, okay, and 1 substantially separate pre-K program.
Did you get that, Sam? Yeah.
So there's gonna be
One
one full day
full-
program, 3 half
Day classrooms offering 6 sections.
offering 6 sections, yeah. And 1 substantially
Separate.
separate,
Substantially separate.
sorry, wow, substantially separate. Ooh, classroom.
Got it.
Okay, motion made by Beth,
Second.
second by Antonella. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
I,
Did you say a year? You got it.
For the year of 2023 to 2024.
Thank you for that. So the motion's been made, seconded by Antonella. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Thank you. Those opposed, nay. That carries 5-0.
Okay, so you're looking to add, what was the number to the full day and half day program?
Well, I mean, I think 3 is probably more palatable than 5 to this group, so I would suggest 3 and see what happens. No,
Okay, to both,
you think different or?
what do you want?
It's gonna be up to you, Antonella, so you can have
Why is it up to
it. It
me?
is. Go ahead, 3 or 5. Or would you vote for one or the other? That's fair. We'll let Antonella make the motion, and then we'll go from there.
I just go back to thinking about, and I know it's been years since we used it. What was it, $2,600 for the full day K? number, and now we're at 63, thinking 6,300 for a full day pre-K. And I understand time,
It's an optional
and-
service that we
no,
don't
I know that,
provide, and there's value
Um,
to it.
and then there's 6,500. Think about that and then figure out the half day from there. You know,
Do more.
We haven't had, we've had full day kindergarten for
Really big
8 years.
increase.
So 6,500 divided by 176 is $36.93. Yep, $37 a day. Just saying.
At how much? 65?
Okay.
But you're more comfortable with the 3.
We just raised it last year.
Better advertising.
We just,
It's not
that's
5.
why, we just raised it last
Okay.
year.
One question I have, at a lot of preschool centers, they're certified, but they're not necessarily certified in early childhood education from DESI. Is that true?
it depends on the program you go to.
I'm just,
Yeah.
thinking, to me, that's another bonus is that you have,
In private preschool, they typically have an associate's degree and they're not certified through the Department of Ed.
and not, you know, not
There's
knocking the other.
the Department of Early Education
Okay.
there. And you don't need a bachelor's, you know.
So I guess it's just an
Private.
extra bonus, right? That you have folks who have that experience.
Here, yeah,
Have their
right, yeah.
bachelor's degree.
Currently it's 6 and 22, is that correct?
That's correct. 6,000 and 2,200.
So potentially 63 and 25.
Okay, 63. And 25. Okay, I move to increase the tuition for the full day pre-K at Meadowbrook School to $6,300. And the tuition to the half day programs at Meadowbrook School pre-K to $2,500.
And the year.
For the year 2023 to 2024.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Lynn Antonella. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
I,
All those opposed, nay.
Okay.
That motion carries 3-2. Good discussion.
Thank you very much. Lodi, does that help with the information?
Thanks for hanging out with us so long.
You might wanna- If we're still going to continue the conversation, I wonder if she wants
Would you
to
like to
stay.
hang out?
You might want to stay.
Around if you want.
Probably, just.
Up to you.
Well, we're definitely gonna take the check for.
No, that's not the next.
Just finalizing,
Finalizing.
as you flip the page, the last part, which I think some of you had already looked at, all of you may.
At the top of page 2.
The only projected FTEs that we'd be looking for, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, more about the custodial needs. But 3 years ago, we had put in place a position at Meadowbrook pre-K to 2 for the social emotional program, so that we would have from pre-K all the way to 12 a social emotional program. 2 years ago, I believe, as we made budget cuts, that position at that time was vacant, so it was an easy one to reduce. And we did not bring it back last year as we recaptured some of the positions, but this is a need. Currently, I believe we have roughly 8 to 10 students who would be in need of this type of programming. And right now, we are doing our best to support in the programming we have with quite a lot of counseling support. We have 2 counselors at Meadowbrook, and we have a preschool coordinator as well as a school psychologist and / early childhood coordinator. Their help plus the administration plus our special education staff have been taking the lion's share of trying to support these students who really could have more success in a true SEL program. Ms. Lodi, did I do that justice? I'm sure you have other things that make that even clearer.
Yeah, a number of these students are requiring ongoing intervention throughout the course of the school day. Requiring a lot of attention and support from the counseling staff in particular, as well as administrators. To the point where it's impacting our counselors' ability to get to the other portions of our job. Our counselors serve as not only that kind of quick touch point for a lot of kids that are struggling in the moment, but also students who have counseling services written into their IEPs. They are also the 504 coordinators for the building. They also facilitate, schedule, and run all of our ACT assistant students and teachers team meetings. And they are really struggling to get to all the components of their job with trying to support these 8 to 10 students that are demanding a lot of time.
Renee, don't they also teach the second step? Correct?
And they also teach second step.
Yeah.
And the needs of the students, as I've already shared, have changed so significantly. We're seeing a level of need that I haven't seen in my time in East Long Meadow. More reticent of what I used to see when I worked in Springfield on a daily basis with the level of need of some of our students. We have 3 students right now that I can think of off the top of my head with a significant trauma backgrounds that we're intervening with probably 5 and 6 times a day, each one of them. So it's definitely something that we need back in order to really support these kiddos in the way that they need to be supported. They are not accessing the general curriculum very well with the amount of time that they're spending out of the room or taking breaks, and it's also impacting the students around them. Particularly in one classroom where we have 3 students in that situation who we could envision in one of those classrooms, kind of all in the same room. And that was more out of, it wasn't intentional, let's put it that way. Fate intervened and the 3 of them ended up together, and it's taking up a significant amount of time and making it challenging for the teacher to really get through her daily routine. So
I would be happy to speak to the council on that because I know it's very impactful where I work when students have to evacuate a room on behalf of another student, and those students who are suffering, they're figuring out they don't even have control over it sometimes. And we were able to adjust some things and get some separate classrooms for these kids for most of the day. And it is just overwhelming how much better it is for them. It's quieter in a lot of ways. It's easier for them to be able to think and focus, and the parents are able to work with them. And I think that if, it's not something, sometimes it comes in a wave, but when you need it, you need it. You really do.
And as similar to the models that we have at the other grade levels, it would be something.
Yeah.
So that you would be able to access much of the mainstream as you can, and that's always the goal. What it does is it gives you the opportunity by providing those services and supports early rather than sort of running as we're doing now, all different kind of, and I'll use the term that was introduced earlier, Band-Aids. Where in the end, then, we're up against team meetings where people then are asking to go out.
Right.
Because we're not able to provide certain services.
This would solve some of that, you think?
I think it would solve some of that, but I don't want to, get ahead of myself and say that it's, you're not going to see any students go out. I can't guarantee that.
But we may save on contractual services.
But you, yes, you definitely would save on that.
I also think it's a proactive situation where, like you're saying, you're setting up those systems for kids ahead of time. Right now, it's very reactive and they're overtaxed and not able to do their regular jobs. So, other places of the school are suffering too because they're constantly trying to put out fires, and suppose that SEL program would be in place to support those kids from the get-go.
Question is, where do you put it?
Yeah, the roof.
It is a great question.
question I have is,
Definitely. Fredette and Ms. Lodi and I had a meeting last week, and we're going to continue to problem solve that if this becomes, a true possibility.
Okay.
To build off of Heather's point too, I think in addition to creating those proactive situations for kids, you're also creating those proactive situations for families. So when you're thinking about families wanting to stay and feeling supported, you're able to intervene and provide services at such a young age that it speaks to a commitment to a family that you're making on behalf of their child for the long term. So in terms of those meetings and how those interactions go on, I think that just builds confidence in the families of East Long Meadow Public Schools that we're committed to the child from the moment they enter the door, and we're working to have supports in place. So I think it speaks volumes to the work that everyone's doing.
Okay,
So that, granted, we're not voting on the budget right now, and we have certainly a budget meeting tomorrow with town council. These are the needs we're bringing forth. These are the only needs we're bringing forth, balancing, and we'll bring specifics on ESSER, what we're balancing some on, as we're gonna keep certain things on ESSER. What we would like to do, whether we're looking at the budget with projected needs or the level services budget. We are, I believe, already looking at moving, hopefully, one building permanent sub in. Am I correct in this?
That's correct.
So that if the current substitute accounts can handle that with the money right now that we're seeing in savings, can handle that building permanent sub, and we can account for it, we move that off of ESSER. And we'd probably reduce, hoping that our daily substitute applicants come back next year, that we're not seeing such a dearth of applicants, that we could reduce and not have 3 per building. And so you might carry 1 extra in ESSER. In essence, continue to wean off of ESSER, not necessarily building off the operational budget. That makes sense.
5,
Five
Going into
in
the
operational,
5 ESSER.
5 ESSER, correct. So down from the 15 you were talking about.
Yeah,
That comes off the rolls. 5 that aren't benefits eligible.
And then the other thing we wanted to bring forward was that
Fiscally responsible. I'm
yeah,
thinking,
that's
always,
good, that's good.
always keeping the balance.
The custodian.
the custodian at Meadowbrook.
Yeah. There truly is.
Did anything.
For full-time, I mean, we're keeping it part-time. Both right now to, once you go past 20 hours, your benefits eligible. We have kept it below 20 hours, but there's definitely a need to have someone full-time on the day shift, helping out, not necessarily be there at the opening of school, but coming in shortly thereafter to help out as we prepare for lunches, as we work through lunches, and then working into the after school.
Yeah, the addition of some of those preschool students into the lunch routine added additional work. In addition, there are new state laws around recycling.
Yes.
To place, which I really thought was gonna send Bill, my head custodian, right on over that edge. Getting a
Yes.
5-year-old who can't even carry their tray to sort their trash off of their tray into 5 separate bins and then put their tray up has been quite the challenge. We did have some support with that at the very beginning in implementing that program, but that support has kind of faded back. And if you can imagine having one custodian in a school with estimated 560 kids in the middle of lunch. Bill, somebody had an accident on the carpet in room 4. He's now going to leave the cafeteria where he's managing that whole recycling space on his own. And the cleanup in between all of the lunches to go clean up more vomit and bathroom accidents than I think I can ever remember. He's being pulled in just way too many directions. And so we're using some of that ESSER funding to get a part-time person in the middle of the day to at least get him through that lunch period. But in reality, the amount of work that he has and compared to the number of custodians in the other buildings that are of similar size, where they have at least 2 custodians. If you think about it, we have 1 day shift custodian, and Maple Shade and Mountain View each have 1, and they're half the size building. He just wasn't able to keep up with the volume of work. And he's, out of the kindness of his heart, does things like come in at 2 o'clock in the morning to cut the sticks for the kindergarten snowman project for the teachers and things like that. So he works hard, but can only do so much.
What would the proposed hours be for the news?
I would look at bringing someone in right around arrival time, because Bill also does duty at the front door to make sure nobody comes in. Different things like that. So having someone there for the start of school, as opposed to he comes in 6 to 2 officially, unofficially, he's there much earlier than that. So having that person who could then stay later on the other end, also kind of stay through dismissal and be a support there, and also to have a crossover of shifts in between would be helpful.
Thank you, Renee. So as I stated on here, this request for 2 additional positions will increase level services to a 4.4% increase. So again, we just wanted to bring forward the information we have right now. I mean, it's constantly changing. We're looking at things and revising, and I'm always analyzing things. So this will be a continued discussion, of course. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, other than, I know that, it has been, not necessarily common in my tenure to get 4%. It has happened. Last year was 3.9. 2012, I think, we may have received a 4%. It is not uncommon across the Commonwealth. You've heard me say that before, for school districts to get a 4% increase. That's, you know, given the need, I'm assuming this year you're going to see districts get more. Because we're not unique. This need is across all school districts, not just in Massachusetts, but probably across the country.
And again, we don't know what chapter 70 is. Remember, that's just a best estimate that I'm putting out there, which of course affects the town as well. So more discussions.
Accept the $3,678.13 from Grin and Barrett.
Oh, wait. Oh. Good job.
A gift to Meadowbrook School.
Okay.
You're welcome.
I'll second that.
Motion made, second by Antonella. Hey, thank you so much for hanging in tonight.
Hey.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nice hanging in there.
Other discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
I,
Opposed, nay. That carries 5-0.
Right, we'll get that deposited for Meadowbrook.
No, this is a second.
He was.
Okay,
You
5-0.
do the same again, Beth.
All right, I move to allow Cure of the Cure Cancer Run Walk at Birchland Park Middle School on Sunday, June 4th, 2023.
That is starting at 7 a.m.
7 to 12.
outside.
Yes. I'm good with that.
Okay, motion made by Beth,
Second.
second by Amy. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
I.
Aye, those opposed, nay. That carries 5-0. Thank you. And one more, if anybody's so inclined.
Adjourn.
Oh.
Missed.
Motion to adjourn made by Beth. Second by Antonella. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
I.
Those opposed, nay. That motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned. Thank you all and good night.
All right, thank you.
Sarah.
See you, Sarah.
Night, Sarah.
Sarah.